Chapter 15. Lin Feng left the lakeside and went to the market, buying more than 10 kinds of animal milk. Returning to his place of residence, Xiao Budian was sitting cross-legged, silently doing breathing exercises. Even though the little guy still loved to play around, he who matured early was very serious in his training, bringing with him a tenacity that normal people didn't have, abnormally hardworking. Lin Feng looked and secretly nodded. That clan brother of Xiao Budian, Shirtiani, gave Xiao Budian a lot of pressure. Xiao Budian was in a meditative state. Lin Feng didn't care about him, sitting to the side and taking out a hemispherical crystal with a concave center, like a large stone bowl. This was the stone skin that was left behind after Lin Feng cut it open and took out the Heaven Thunder Moon Jade. Even though it wasn't as precious as the Heaven Thunder Moon Jade, it was still a kind of heavenly treasure, containing large amounts of lightning essence energy. After being cut open by Lin Feng, there were originally 2 pieces of the stone skin. One was left in Stone Village to help the villagers and children strengthen their physique. The other piece the old village chief insisted that Lin Feng bring along. Lin Feng scraped off some small fragments from the stone skin. These small crystal fragments could be used as materials for Lin Feng to set up the 9 Heaven Thunder summoning. It was also because of this stone skin that Lin Feng didn't need to exchange for lightning attribute crystal stones from the system, saving a lot of expenses. Speaking of which, not only the Heaven Thunder Moon Jade, I'm afraid that even this stone skin was originally a lucky treasure prepared by the heavens for Xiao Budian. Lin Feng thought in his heart, I took Xiao Budian as my disciple, this lucky chance is also mine. Putting away the scraped crystal fragments, Lin Feng placed the stone skin in front of him. After his deliberate polishing, the current stone skin was already completely a large bowl made entirely of lightning attribute crystal stones. The beast milk that was previously placed in the kitchen to be boiled was also done. After the inn waiter brought it in, Lin Feng poured all the beast milk into the large thunder crystal bowl. Thinking for a bit, he also took out the Heaven Thunder Moon Jade from his bosom. The Heaven Thunder Jade that was originally the size of an adult's fist, after Lin Feng's constant squeezing these days, was now only the size of an egg. Lin Feng already doesn't plan to absorb any more spiritual energy from it to help his own cultivation. He must leave a portion as the energy source for the Northern Aurora Sword. However, apart from this, it could also be used to add more food to Xiao Budian's meal. Soaking the Heaven Thunder Moon Jade in the beast milk, Lin Feng used his own Fa Li to guide it, merging a bit of the thunder attribute spiritual energy in the Heaven Thunder Moon Jade into the milk. The Thunder Crystal Bowl and the Heaven Thunder Jade originally came from the same source. With the spirit energy of the Heaven Thunder Jade as a primer, the thunder energy in the Thunder Crystal Bowl also immediately dispersed, merging into the beast milk in the bowl. The milky white beast milk that was giving off a milky fragrance immediately began to roll, as if it was boiling. Large bubbles continuously appeared on its surface, and then burst one after another. Streaks of blue and purple electricity interweaved in the milk, emitting a sizzling sound. Xiao Budian at this time finally stopped and woke up from his meditative state. As soon as he woke up, his little nose sniffed twice. Xiao Budian opened his eyes, seeing Lin Feng and the beast milk in the thunder crystal bowl. He immediately cheered, Master! He abruptly jumped up and scurried to Lin Feng's side, circling around the big bowl, his 2 big black eyes staring straight at the beast milk, muttering, so fragrant. Lin Feng smiled, taking out the Heaven Thunder Moon Jade from the bowl, handing the big bowl to Xiao Budian and warned, Master added something into the milk. Pay attention when you drink it. Use your own Fa Li to guide the spiritual energy in the milk. If you feel that your body can't take it, stop immediately. Xiao Budian nodded his head repeatedly, happily taking the big bowl and wolfing it down. In a short while he finished the whole bowl of beast milk. Xiao Budian ate happily, but after eating the side effects also appeared. The normally cute Xiao Budian turned into a problem child. He had a pair of big red eyes like a white rabbit, and was running all over the place, crying out non-stop. Lin Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He already told this little guy to use his own Fa Li to guide the spiritual energy in the milk while drinking the milk, but this guy was good. He only cared about eating happily, completely forgetting the matter of guiding the spiritual energy to the back of his head. Seeing that Xiao Budian had turned into a small fierce beast, running all over the place, tossing and turning if he wasn't stopped, the entire inn would be torn down. Lin Feng was helpless, he could only restrain Xiao Budian himself. When Xiao Budian woke up and saw his master's black face, he immediately understood what was going on. In a daze, he scratched his head and said in a small voice, "Yeah, I got into trouble." After sending away the innkeeper, Lin Feng poked his little head in amusement and anger. When you caught a female beast in the mountains, you directly jumped into its arms to drink milk. Now that you're in town, if you want to drink milk, then buy it at the market. Use this bowl to hold the beast milk after you buy it. From now on, this will be your personal bowl, look after your own rice bowl. Xiao Budian nodded his head repeatedly, happily hugging the thunder crystal bowl to his chest. "Thank you, master." Seeing his happy look, Lin Feng also felt happy in his heart. After warning him a few more sentences, Lin Feng sat down cross-legged. Lin Feng carefully analyzed the uses of the Northern Aurora Sword as well as the 2 spells Cloud Dragon Escape and 9 Heaven Thunder Summoning, thinking in his heart how to use the cards he already has to the greatest effect. At the edge of the boundless mountain, a few streaks of scarlet-red fire light flashed past, landing on the ground. A dozen or so red-clothed people stood together, mana surging all over their bodies. Blazing fire elemental energy continuously roiled, like a furnace. The grass and shrubs under their feet and the surrounding towering ancient trees were all roasted until they gradually withered. The 3 people in the lead, 2 of them have mana as deep as the ocean, vast and boundless. Impressively, they are Foundation Establishment Stage cultivators. But right now these 2 Foundation Establishment Stage cultivators are respectfully standing behind the other old man. The old man has a head of red hair, incomparably flamboyant, his appearance is very fierce, but there isn't the slightest aura of a strong person leaking out from his body, just like a normal person. But behind the old man, including the 2 Foundation Establishment Stage cultivators, all of the red-clothed people are looking at him with reverent gazes. A golden elixir giant, even if not a shred of aura is leaked out, it's enough to make everyone fearful. Everyone's gaze turned towards the distance outside the mountain, that's the direction of Wuzhou City. One of the Foundation Establishment Stage cultivators suddenly opened his mouth and asked, "You're sure they left the mountain?" A person behind him stepped out of the ranks and bowed. It's precisely the red-robed youth who was previously toyed with by Xiao Budian. He respectfully replied, "According to the traces they left behind, they're heading out of the mountain." Flames flickered in the eyes of the Foundation Establishment Stage cultivator, looking towards the direction of Wuzhou City. "Leaving the mountain from here, the closest big city is Wuzhou, let's go there first to take a look." The red-robed youth hesitated for a moment and asked, "Even though Wuzhou is located at the border, but in terms of geography, it's closer to the Celeritas Sword Sect's territory?" The other Foundation Establishment Stage cultivator waved his hand. "If that kid really has the talent you say he has, even if it's the Mount Shu Sword Sect's territory, we'll still have to give it a try." The red-haired old man who didn't speak from start to finish suddenly opened his mouth and said, "Less nonsense, let's set off, target Wuzhou." Before his voice even landed, he slapped the flying sword on his back, already setting up a fiery sword light and rushing into the sky. The group of Blaze Sword Sect cultivators closely followed behind him. Streaks of scarlet-red fire light streaked across the sky, like a meteor shower rushing towards Wuzhou City. At the same time, in an inn in Wuzhou City, Lin Feng was silently meditating when suddenly there was a knock on the door. Lin Feng opened the door. The waiter was standing outside the door with a fawning smile on his face. Seeing Lin Feng, he said with a smile, "Sir, didn't you tell me to pay attention and inform you immediately if anything interesting happens in the city? Now there really is." Lin Feng smiled faintly, casually throwing a piece of broken silver to him. The waiter's face instantly turned into a flower. Not daring to keep him in suspense, he hurriedly said, "Isn't Xiao family's young master Xiao Yan unable to cultivate anymore? Before, when he was still a cultivation genius, he set up a marriage. Now the girl has come knocking on his door." Murong Yenran has finally arrived at Wuzhou. Chapter 16. Lin Feng calmly sent away the waiter and closed the door. Unable to control his smile any longer, it blossomed on his face. Murong Yenran has arrived at Wuzhou City. The legendary annulment of the engagement is finally going to happen. Lin Feng turned his head towards Xiao Budian and said, "Silly boy, follow master." Xiao Budian's big black and white eyes spun around. "Master, where are we going?" Lin Feng smiled and said, "Originally you were going to have your first junior brother, but you volunteered to be the junior, so you're going to have your first senior brother." Bringing along Xiao Budian, Lin Feng came to the small lake north of the city that Xiao Yan often comes to, sprinkling the ground thunder crystals according to the pattern of the formation on the grass by the lake, setting up the formation to activate the ninth heaven thunder summoning. Even though according to Lin Feng's plan they don't have to make a move, they still have to be fully prepared. After doing all this, Lin Feng brought Xiao Budian towards the Xiao family mansion. When they arrived outside the mansion, they just happened to see Xiao Yan walking out of the door dressed in black. The black-clothed youth stopped his footsteps, but didn't turn his head, only spitting out an ice-cold sentence. "After 3 years, I'll find you." The youth's back was stretched extremely long under the illumination of the sun, looking lonely and desolate. Inside the door behind him, one could see Murong Yenran's small mouth slightly open, somewhat blankly staring at Xiao Yan's back. The young girl was holding a contract in her hand, tottering, as if it had become as heavy as 1,000 kilograms. After speaking, Xiao Yan walked out of the door alone. "The 3 of you, since your goal has already been achieved, then please return." An aged voice came from the courtyard. That is the Xiao family's leader, Xiao Yan's grandfather. "Grandpa Xiao, Yenran apologizes to you for today's matter. If you have time in the future, please come to the Murong family as a guest." Since the goal had been achieved, Murong Yenran didn't want to stay any longer. She left the Xiao family's mansion with Yi Gu and the white-robed young man. "Miss Murong family, I hope that in the future you won't feel regret for your actions today. Also, don't think that with the Celeritas Sword sect supporting you you can do as you please. The Heaven Primal world is very very big, and there are quite a few powers stronger than the Celeritas Sword sect." Just as Murong Yenran and the other 2 were about to leave, a light voice carrying a faint coldness suddenly rang out. The 3 of them stopped in their tracks and looked back. Xiao Zhener was standing on the high wall of the mansion. Rays of sunlight shone on her back and wrapped her in it. Looking from afar, she looked like a purple lotus that had bloomed in the mortal world, pure and beautiful, untainted by dust. Lin Feng was also impressed by Xiao Zhener's beauty, but in his heart, he was secretly happy. Personal likes and dislikes are too obvious. "I don't even need to think about taking you as my disciple. Once I take Xiao Yan as my disciple, you will be in my palm." Meeting the gazes of Murong Yenran and the other 2, a tiny golden flame suddenly surged out of the girl's beautiful eyes that were like autumn water. Looking at the tiny golden flame in the girl's eyes, Yiji's body fiercely trembled. A terrified expression instantly covered that old face. His withered hand grabbed the puzzled Murong Yenran and the white-robed young man in panic and then ran away like he was running for his life. Looking at Yiji's actions, other than the old clan leader, the other people in the Xiao family couldn't help but have faces full of astonishment. Lin Feng's heart trembled. Even if she is at the foundation establishment stage at such a young age, she shouldn't have scared Yi Gu, who is also at the foundation establishment stage to that extent. The golden flame in her eyes just now looks a bit strange. This girl's background is a bit strange. According to the routine, if she's not the saint of an ancient clan, then she's the princess of some big country. If I'm wrong, I'll write my name backwards. Lin Feng secretly rejoiced that he didn't rashly provoke this little girl whose background was suspected to be extremely terrifying. It was better to take Xiao Yan as a disciple first. Everything had already shown that wherever Xiao Yan went, this little girl would definitely follow. If Xiao Yan became his disciple, Xiao Zhen wouldn't be far away. When doing things, one must be good at grasping the main contradiction. While thinking, Lin Feng quietly left the Xiao family's mansion with Xiao Budian and chased in the direction that Xiao Yan left. At this time, Xiao Yan would definitely go to the small lake in the north of the city and lick his wounds by himself. Sure enough, after a while, Lin Feng had already caught up with Xiao Yan. The black-clothed youth was like a wounded lone wolf at this time. His whole body was surrounded by an icy aura that kept people away. Strength. Without strength, you're not even as good as a pile of dog shit. At least, no one dares to step on dog shit. His shoulders gently shrugging, the youth's low self-mocking laughter, with grief and indignation, lingered in the air. Xiao Yan tightly bit his lips, letting the faint smell of blood spread from the corner of his mouth. Although he didn't show any inappropriate emotions in the hall, Murong Yenron's words were like a knife cutting his heart, making his whole body tremble. Father, mother, grabbing the 2 rings hanging on the rope in front of his chest, Xiao Yan's expression was sad. His mother died of illness many years ago, and his father was seriously injured in a fight 3 years ago and finally died, leaving only these 2 rings for him. Before his father died, Xiao Yan had sworn that he would become a powerful cultivator and avenge his father. But unexpectedly, just after he made the oath the day before, his body changed greatly, turning from a genius to a loser. After that, no matter how hard he tried, he could only stay at the first level of Lianqi realm. I must not give up, for my father, for my mother, and for today. Opening his left hand with a blood stain, Xiao Yan's voice was hoarse but firm. I don't want to suffer the humiliation today a second time. Xiao Yan walked in front of him and made up his mind, while Lin Feng, who was behind him, felt that his blood was boiling. Sure enough, after the engagement was broken off, this guy's seed went out of control. Just watching from the side, Lin Feng felt that there seemed to be an infinite domineering aura in his body, which was about to surge like a great river. Seeing that the grandpas and the 2 rings still didn't move, Lin Feng didn't dare to have any hesitation, walked forward, and stopped in front of Xiao Yan. What a joke! The one who was destined to be with him was the pavilion closest to the water. If he didn't seize the opportunity, he wouldn't even get the soup. Nowadays, even grandpas had to compete for the position. Hee hee, little guy, it seems that you need some help? Lin Feng chuckled lightly. Xiao Yan looked at the young Taoist in front of him in a white robe with wide sleeves, feather clothes, and star crown. After being stunned for a moment, he frowned and asked, "Who are you? What do you want?" Lin Feng smiled indifferently. Don't be in a hurry to ask who I am. Don't you think that the question you should be most concerned about is how you ended up in this situation? Xiao Yan's gaze suddenly became as cold as a knife, you know? Under the cold gaze, there was a blazing fire. Lin Feng let out a long laugh. Follow me, and you will naturally know the whole story. With that, Lin Feng used the cloud dragon escape, grabbed Xiao Yan, and flew into the air, flying towards the small lake in the north of the city. Xiao Yan was shocked, but his cultivation was only at the first level of Qi disciple, and he couldn't break free from Lin Feng's hand at all. He calmed down and observed, and his heart instantly trembled. Lin Feng's cloud dragon escape was used, and it was as if he had transformed into a divine dragon from beyond the heavens, soaring through the clouds and riding on the mist. The divine dragon moved, soared above the 9 heavens, hid, and swam within the 4 seas. When he exhaled, it became clouds. When he exhaled, it became rain. He controlled the wind and thunder, and his divine power was limitless. The essence of the cloud dragon escape was displayed incisively by Lin Feng. But what shocked Xiao Yan the most was the Xiao Budian, who was following closely behind Lin Feng, who looked no more than 3 or 4 years old. Master, wait for me. The Xiao Budian also used the cloud dragon escape, and his jade-like appearance also carried a bit of an otherworldly aura, which looked even more eye-catching. Xiao Yan had seen a lot of cultivators at the 4th level of Qi disciple, but for someone as young as the Xiao Budian to reach the 4th level of Qi disciple, not to mention seeing, Xiao Yan hadn't even heard of it. Xiao Yan didn't feel much pressure from Lin Feng. The feeling that Lin Feng gave him was like an ordinary person who had never cultivated Dao techniques. But it was this young Taoist in front of him, who was wearing a white robe and a feathered robe and a starry crown, who taught the Xiao Budian. To be able to teach such an outstanding disciple, his own cultivation was naturally not low, and it was even more impossible for him to be an ordinary mortal. Then there was only one explanation: this seemingly young Taoist had already reached the realm of returning to one's natural state, which was why he couldn't see through his depth. Maybe he really knows the problem with my body? Xiao Yan couldn't help but think this way. Lin Feng wasn't clear about Xiao Yan's mental state, but looking at his expression, he knew that he had already successfully established the image of an expert in Xiao Yan's heart. This was the reason why he wanted to bring the Xiao buddy in along. There was no other way. This kid was really too outstanding of an advertisement, fully displaying the results of Lin Feng's teaching to the outside world. Sometimes, Lin Feng even rejoiced that he was the first to meet the Xiao Budian, which would directly reduce the difficulty of tricking others to be his disciples in the future. In the blink of an eye, they arrived at the lakeside. Lin Feng put Xiaoyan down, and Xiaoyan looked at the Xiao Budian, then looked at him, took a deep breath and asked, "Senior, please give me some pointers. What exactly is the problem with my body?" Lin Feng smiled indifferently, extended his finger and lightly pointed at Xiaoyan's chest. "Your problem lies in these 2 rings." Chapter 17. Your problem lies in these 2 rings. Lin Feng smiled faintly and pointed at the 2 rings hanging on Xiaoyan's chest. Xiaoyan's expression turned cold. Does this senior also think that these 2 rings are cursed? Lin Feng ignored the change in Xiaoyan's expression and said indifferently, "Ordinary people think that curses are illusory and absurd, but they don't know that the power of curses is real." Looking at Xiaoyan's increasingly pale face, Lin Feng smiled and suddenly changed his tone. "But these 2 rings of yours have nothing to do with curses. Rather than saying that the change in your body is a natural disaster, it's better to say that it's a man-made disaster." Man-made disaster? Xiaoyan was slightly at a loss, then his face became extremely gloomy. "Senior, are you saying that someone deliberately harmed me? It's definitely impossible for my parents to be the culprit. That means that even my parents' deaths are related to the person who harmed me?" Lin Feng secretly gave him a thumbs up in his heart. "Good kid, good imagination, you have a bright future." He waved his hand, calmly looking at the gloomy-faced Xiaoyan. "Whether or not your parents' life and death is related to this ring, I can't say for sure right now. But the huge change in your body is precisely the result of these 2 rings. There is a spirit residing in the rings. The spirit is constantly absorbing your mana to strengthen itself." Lin Feng said slowly. His tone was calm, but it was like a mountain pressing down on Xiaoyan's heart. "This is why your cultivation suddenly regressed 3 years ago. Although you trained hard in the following 3 years, you didn't make any progress. This is also the crux of the problem. Because the mana you trained hard to obtain has all become nourishment for the spirit." Xiaoyan lowered his head to look at the ring on his chest, his expression at a loss gradually revealing resentment. Seeing the change in his expression, Lin Feng let out a sigh of relief and secretly smiled. "This is called striking first, gaining the upper hand. I'll beat you to the position of the villain first. Let's see how you can compete with me then. Don't you think you're in a favorable position? You're still putting on airs there, waiting for Xiaoyan to come and beg you? Are you dumbfounded now?" Lin Feng was proud of himself. He had not wronged anyone. The grandpa in the ring might be able to make Xiaoyan soar to the sky, but Xiaoyan's fall from the clouds to the bottom of the valley was most likely caused by them. If Lin Feng had not joined them, they would have been able to trick Xiaoyan and use a large number of cultivation methods and medicinal pills to make up for their mistakes. But now, Lin Feng had made the first move and did not give them a chance to make up for it. So, the only thing left between them and Xiaoyan was hatred. At the same time, Lin Feng was secretly on guard. Next, he might have to confront the old man in the ring head-on. Lin Feng raised his head to look at the sky. The summer weather was like a child's face. It could change at a moment's notice. It was sunny before, but now it was covered with dark clouds and muffled thunder. Lin Feng let out a sigh of relief in his heart. Fortunately, the weather has changed. Otherwise, the 9-heaven thunder summoning would not be able to display its true power. Now, I have enough trump cards to play with you. To the point where there was only a remnant soul left, living in the ring and waiting to be someone's grandpa. No matter how powerful the old man's background was, or how powerful he was now in an extremely weak state. The east wind blows, the war drums beat. Who's afraid of who? Just as Xiaoyan was clenching his teeth and grabbing the ring in front of his chest, a long sigh rang in his and Lin Feng's ears. "If not for your offerings, I don't know how long I would have to sleep." Xiaoyan stared blankly at the ring in his hand. A cloud of white mist rose from the ring and gradually condensed into a human figure in the air. From blurry to clear, It was completely visible, vivid and lifelike. Lin Feng also stared blankly at the light figure. To be precise, from the moment the other party spoke, Lin Feng fell into a sluggish state. Because that was clearly a woman's voice. Not an old man, but an old woman? Lin Feng's mind was in a mess. Looking carefully at the light figure, it was undoubtedly rude to call someone an old woman. This was an extremely beautiful woman. She wore a light green gown that fluttered in the wind. She looked down at the clear stream, calm and composed. The green-robed woman's eyes wandered. After glancing at Xiao Yan, her gaze fell on Lin Feng. Looking at her, an article he had read in his previous life, Luo Shenfu, suddenly appeared in Lin Feng's mind. Her form is graceful like a swan, graceful like a swimming dragon, glorious like an autumn chrysanthemum, luxuriant like a spring pine. Like a light cloud covering the moon, drifting like the returning snow of the flowing wind. When Chao Ji first saw Luo Shun, this was his feeling, right? Lin Feng's imagination ran wild, but in his heart he sounded the highest level of alarm. The green-clothed girl's beauty, Murong Yenron's calmness is lacking, Xiao Zhen is slightly more immature than her. In all of Lin Feng's life, probably only that peach tree demon Long Yi from back then can be mentioned in the same breath as her. Long Yi and her, on the other hand, were like orchids and chrysanthemums, shining brightly for a moment. But just like when he faced Long Yi, right now facing such an exquisite beauty, Lin Feng's heart couldn't give rise to the slightest feeling of passion. Instead, he felt a slight chill. The danger level of this green-robed woman is definitely on the same level as Long Yi. Perhaps being with Xiao Zhen day and night since childhood has trained Xiao Yan's horizons. Right now, Xiao Yan didn't have any thoughts of admiration, instead staring at the green-robed woman with a face full of hostility. Offering? Xiao Yan's tone was cold. Were the changes in my body really your doing? The green-robed woman sighed faintly. Mingyu also had no choice. Please don't blame me. I don't blame you. I blame your mother. Xiao Yan couldn't restrain himself anymore, snapping the rope around his neck and throwing out the ring that the green-robed woman's silhouette resided in. The ring strangely stopped in midair, silently floating in the air just like that. The silhouette it projected swayed slightly before stabilizing again. The green-robed woman sighed lightly. Mingyu can understand young friend's anger, but please take note that the other ring you're wearing is actually the source of your misfortune these 3 years. Speaking, her gaze looked towards Lin Feng. This fellow Taoist's discerning eyes are like torches. The mana that Xiao Yan painstakingly cultivated for these 3 years was indeed absorbed by me. I express my deepest apologies for this. But 3 years ago, Xiao Yan's misfortune of falling from Qi Disciple Great Completion to Qi Disciple Level 1 has nothing to do with me. Xiao Yan's expression was as calm as still water, looking at the green-robed woman, then looking at Lin Feng, his gaze finally landing on the second ring in his hand. Lin Feng's expression was indifferent, as if everything was within his grasp. Outsiders couldn't see his true thoughts from his expression. But in fact, the sense of crisis in Lin Feng's heart was getting more and more serious. This woman was definitely not easy to deal with. With just a few words, not only did she remove 70 to 80% of her responsibility, but she also took control of the conversation, making Xiao Yan's attention start to follow her rhythm. The green-robed woman looked calmly at Lin Feng and Xiao Yan. In that ring, there is the remnant soul of a primordial fierce beast, Tao Tai. Tao Tai? Xiao Yan was shocked. In the legends, the Tao Tai is one of the 4 great fierce beasts of the primordial era, known as the king of fierce beasts along with Hundun, Qiongqi and Taowu. The Tao Tai's nature is greedy. It devours all things. At its peak, it can even devour the heavens and the earth, destroying all living beings. This kind of fierce beast, even great primordial spirit cultivators would have a headache if they encountered it. The attacks aimed at the Tao Tai would all be swallowed by it with one big mouth. Such a savage glutton, it is really hard to deal with. Lin Feng also frowned slightly, looking at the second ring on Xiao Yan's hand. The green-robed woman continued. 10 years ago, due to my heavy injuries, I was forced to entrust my soul in this ring of yours, after which I was in a deep sleep, until 3 years ago I discovered that the Tao Tai had devoured all of your mana, even your life force. I used the Heaven Cage sigil to seal the Tao Tai's remnant soul, but the damage to my own soul was too great. I had no choice but to enter a deep sleep again. The green-robed woman had an apologetic expression. It was during this second deep sleep that in order to repair my own soul, I had been unconsciously absorbing the newly obtained mana from your cultivation, but I didn't want to cause you trouble. I ask for young friend's forgiveness. Although Xiao Yan's face was still full of suspicion, his expression had already clearly eased up. Lin Feng's expression did not change, but his heart was sinking more and more. Especially when he flipped through the exchange system and discovered the Heaven Cage sigil. After reading its description, his heart sank even further. Heaven Cage sigil, a sigil that uses one's own mana to set up a cage, sealing the mana of others. Against soul targets, the effect is increased. Note: the Heaven Primordial World's greatest sect in the cultivation world, the head of the 3 great sacred lands, Taishu Temple's unique secret ability. Chapter 18. When he knew that the green-clothed girl's background was Taishu Temple, Lin Feng's heart abruptly sunk to the bottom. In this Heaven Primal world, everyone knows that the 3 strongest sects are the Taoist Holy Land Taishu Temple, the Buddhist Holy Land Great Thunderclap Temple, and the Sword Holy Land Mount Shu Sword Sect. But even if Great Thunderclap Temple and Mount Shu Sword Sect don't say it out loud, they have to admit in their hearts that there is a difference in strength between the 3 holy lands. And Taishu Temple is without a doubt the head of the 3 holy lands, the #1 sect in the world. Different from the other 2 holy lands where incense is at its peak and disciples are all over the world, Taishu Temple is actually extremely low-key. The number of disciples they have is also not many. But as long as a Taishu Temple disciple enters the world, it will shake the world. Taishu Temple takes the elite route in accepting disciples. The threshold is ridiculously high. Not one of the disciples they accept isn't an absolutely stunning cultivating genius. Not considering other aspects, just purely in terms of bone structure and comprehension, the average of Taishu Temple disciples is definitely #1 in the world. It is not an exaggeration to say that that is the place with the highest concentration of cultivating geniuses in the Heaven Primal world. And Taishu Temple's paths, techniques, and divine abilities are also famous throughout Heaven Primal. Its supreme scripture, the mysteries of the Great Way of the Great Void, is known as the closest Tao technique to the Way of the Heavens in the Heaven Primal world. As long as one succeeds in cultivating it, they will definitely be able to reach the supreme realm of the primordial spirit. The Heaven Cage sigil is even more so the signature spell of Taishu Temple. Its great name is widely spread in the cultivation world. Even Xiao Yan remembered the origins of the Heaven Cage sigil after a brief moment of doubt. He couldn't help being shocked. You just said the Heaven Cage sigil? You're from Taishu Temple? The green-clothed girl slightly nodded her head. My name is Yan Mingyue. My master is from Taishu Temple. Xiao Yan's expression became complicated, somewhat disappointed. Taishu Temple, Lin Feng's mouth tasted bitter. He remembered the various rumors about Xiao Yan in Wuzhou City. One of them was that when Xiao Yan displayed astonishing talent, it once alarmed Taishu Temple and they intended to take him in. Now, looking at Xiao Yan's expression, he knew that this rumor was true. Lin Feng didn't even need to think with his toes to know how Xiao Yan was feeling right now. After all, that was the #1 sacred place in the world. To be able to become a disciple of the Taishu Temple, not only would Xiao Yan be able to walk on the path of cultivation, but the entire Xiao family would also be able to bring honor to their ancestors. After that, Xiao Yan suddenly turned from a genius to a good-for-nothing, and the Taiwan Temple passed him by. What you can't get is always the best. The Taiwan Temple might become a knot in his heart, a huge regret. What was worse was that he might even bring up the regrets of his deceased parents. For example, they might say that they didn't get to see their son become a disciple of the Taishu Temple. Under such circumstances, if Xiao Yan had a chance to re-enter the Taishu Temple, what would he choose? Lin Feng didn't dare to think any further. Taishu Temple, so what? The #1 sacred place, so what? Lin Feng was determined in his heart. If I get rid of this Xiao Yan, maybe I can get a Xiao Zhen. If I miss this buy one get one free deal, I will be punished by the heavens. Lin Feng observed closely and found that Yan Mingyu's tone was calm. She looked at Xiao Yan with an apologetic gaze, but there was no passion or sincerity. Yan Mingyu's expression didn't look like she was faking it. That meant that she only felt apologetic towards Xiao Yan. Maybe she would recommend Xiao Yan to enter the Taishu temple to make up for it. But it wasn't because she valued Xiao Yan's talent and insisted on taking him as a disciple. It was no wonder. She came from the Taishu temple and grew up among geniuses. What kind of monstrous genius hadn't she seen before? She herself was probably a cultivation genius with amazing talent. Since this was the case, it gave Lin Feng an opportunity. Lin Feng thought about it and suddenly a light flashed in his mind. A warm smile like the sun appeared on Lin Feng's face. His gaze turned to Xiao Yan beside him. Tao Tai? I haven't seen it for a long time. Lin Feng looked at the second ring on Xiao Yan's palm and a playful smile appeared on his lips. Xiao Yan was stunned. Yan Mingyu also looked at Lin Feng, her eyes flashing with an incomprehensible light. Has this friend seen a living pure-blooded Tao Tai? Yan Mingyu looked at Lin Feng and opened her red lips. How should I address you? Lin Feng smiled faintly. I am a mountain wanderer. My name is not worth mentioning. My surname is Lin. You can call me Taoist Lin. Then, without waiting for Yan Mingyu to reply, Lin Feng continued, I heard Taoist Yan mention that you were injured 10 years ago and then you entrusted your body to this ring. Is that right? Lin Feng wanted to take back control of this conversation. He couldn't give Yan Mingyu a chance. He couldn't let her bring up the matter of recommending Xiao Yan to the Taishu temple as compensation. Otherwise, Xiao Yan would immediately bow down and worship him. Then there would be nothing for him, Lin Feng. Yan Mingyu looked at Lin Feng. It was as if she could see the bottom of Lin Feng's heart. Maybe she didn't know what Lin Feng was thinking, but she clearly saw Lin Feng's intention to take control of the conversation. Lin Feng's expression was normal, but his palms were sweating. This woman was too smart. It was as if she could see through people's hearts. She was as calm as water and didn't have the slightest intention of being aggressive, but she gave Lin Feng a mountain of pressure. But luckily, Yan Mingyu didn't dig deeper. She just nodded calmly. It was 10 years ago. Because of the system's protection, she couldn't see the depth of Lin Feng's cultivation. But there were too few people in this world that she couldn't see through. So, although it was the first time they met, Yan Mingyu's attitude towards Lin Feng reflected a certain degree of respect. Lin Feng nodded his head. Not too long ago, I met a demon. That demon was clearly heavily injured and was forced to entrust its soul to an old peach tree. Xiao Yan looked at Lin Feng a bit strangely, not understanding why he suddenly brought up a seemingly unrelated topic. Yan Mingyu's expression didn't change. Silently, she looked at Lin Feng, waiting for him to continue. Lin Feng raised his eyes to meet hers. Their gazes were both calm and distant. Lin Feng said faintly, according to the locals, that demon also suddenly appeared 10 years ago. Oh, that's right, it was a female demon. Yan Mingyu's expression finally changed. She lowered her eyes, her slender eyelashes slightly trembling. Fellow Taoist, do you know the origin of that female demon? Lin Feng shook his head, then looked at her and said word by word, I only know that she called herself Long Yi. Yan Mingyu's face revealed a trace of a smile. She gazed into the distance, but there was no focus in her line of sight. After a long while she leisurely sighed. I didn't die, she really didn't die either. Yan Mingyu turned her head to look at Lin Feng, saying seriously, thank you fellow Taoist for telling me this information. Does fellow Taoist know the whereabouts of that Long Yi? Lin Feng said in his heart that he didn't know, but that female demon will most likely come looking for trouble with Ji after she recovers. He slightly shook his head. I don't know about this. While speaking, Lin Feng was carefully observing Yan Mingyu from beginning to end, paying attention to the changes in her expression and every movement. After hearing the news that Long Yi was still alive, a trace of melancholy appeared in Yan Mingyu's eyes that were as bright as the moon, even revealing a bit of anxiety. Lin Feng let out a long sigh of relief in his heart, knowing that he gambled correctly. This Yan Mingyu and that Long Yi have a standard relationship of mortal enemies. It's very possible that it's some Taoist holy maiden versus the demon holy maiden. The two's appearance, talent, and Taoist arts are all on the same level. They admire and understand each other, but they're also opposing each other in life and death. There's an irreconcilable contradiction between them, entangling them for a lifetime, putting on a show of love and killing each other. No, it's a good show that they're both enemies and friends. Generally speaking, perhaps they'll even fall in love with the same destined one? But that's not important. What's important is that after hearing the news about Long Yi, Yan Mingyu indeed couldn't remain calm. Even though her composure is pretty good, Lin Feng can still see that right now she wants to immediately find Long Yi and fight another 300 rounds with her. Under these circumstances, she wouldn't still be thinking about compensating Xiao Yan, right? At least it wouldn't be her #1 priority. Lin Feng decided to add fuel to the fire, so he opened his mouth to ask, "Fellow Taoist, Yan lost your physical body and only your soul is left in the ring. It's probably very inconvenient for you to move around, right?" Yan Mingyu's gaze flashed, and after looking deeply at Lin Feng, she said honestly, "I have a way to reconstruct my physical body. It's just that before this, I need to do a lot of preparation work. During this period, I indeed still have to be left in the ring. Otherwise, even though my soul won't be harmed, I'll lose mana for nothing." Looking at Yan Mingyu, who has already completely recovered her calm, Lin Feng's heart trembled, not daring to relax in the slightest. Seeing Yan Mingyu speak frankly, Lin Feng didn't beat around the bush and said directly, "Perhaps I can lend fellow Taoist a hand." Finished speaking, Lin Feng took out the soul calming grass. Yan Mingyu immediately recognized it when she saw it. Soul calming grass? The main ingredient of the soul stabilizing pill. With the soul stabilizing pill, I can indeed leave the ring, my soul will be stable, and it'll be no problem for me to mentally roam 10,000 miles in the day. She looked deeply at Lin Feng and suddenly stopped speaking, instead using mana to transmit her voice to Lin Feng, not letting Xiao Yan hear. Fellow Taoists' painstaking efforts, is it for this little friend Xiao Yan? Chapter 19. Yan Mingyue looked deeply at Lin Feng, suddenly using mana to send a sound transmission. Fellow Taoists' painstaking efforts, is it for this little friend Xiao Yan? In an instant, Lin Feng felt his heart stop for half a beat. From the moment they met, Yan Mingyue had always been courteous, calm. She was born in the holy land of the world, but she was friendly and didn't have the slightest sense of superiority. Now that she was in trouble, she didn't feel embarrassed at all. Instead, she was calm as if everything was under her control. But Lin Feng keenly felt that this seemingly modest Yan Mingyue had a pride that went deep into her soul in her bones. She looked friendly, but her soul was arrogant. It was easy for people to get the wrong impression the first time they met. This was a person with an extremely strong heart, so strong that she didn't care about the little things and didn't care about what others thought. Her pride wasn't contempt, arrogance, or arrogance. On the contrary, her pride was her friendliness, her politeness, and her patience. Because in her mind, you are not as good as me, so I am polite to you. I won't mind your rudeness and I will teach you patiently. In her heart, she thinks that the other person is not as good as her. She won't get angry because of others' rudeness, nor will she look down on others because of it. She will only think that the other person's level is too low and can't understand her. Just like how people don't care about the provocation of snakes, insects, rats, and ants. Does anyone think this is pride? Everyone thinks this is natural, and Yan Mingyue has this mentality. Before, when she was talking to Xiao Yan, who was only at the meditational level, or Lin Feng, who she couldn't see through, Yan Mingyue always behaved very calmly. She didn't look like someone who came from the holy land of the world and once dominated the world. But now, she was showing off her abilities. One sentence pointed straight at Lin Feng's heart, straightforward and sharp. As much as Lin Feng was shocked, he was also a little excited. The change in Yan Mingyue's style meant that she put away her pride and put Lin Feng on the same level as her. The more it's like this, the calmer I have to be. Lin Feng calmed himself down and used his mana to transmit his voice. He said lightly, "I'm just a Sanren from the mountains. Of course, I can't compare to Taishu Temple. I've been trying my best to find a few successors. Therefore, please let me pass, fellow Taoist. I will be eternally grateful." Since the other party had already made it clear, Lin Feng might as well admit it openly. However, although he was praising the Taishu temple, Lin Feng's tone was calm and natural. It was obvious that he had placed both sides on equal footing. The more he acted like this, the more Yan Mingyue couldn't figure out his background. After pondering for a moment, Yan Mingyue finally decided to form a good relationship with him. She no longer used her transcendence energy to transmit her voice, and said, "In that case, thank you for the soul-calming grass." Lin Feng smiled and nodded, then turned to look at Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan had also calmed down at this moment. His gaze towards Yan Mingyue was extremely complicated. Yan Mingyue looked at the second ring on Xiao Yan's palm. She said softly, "The heaven cage sigil I laid down before is already very weak. The remnant soul of the Taotai could awaken at any time. This ring, Xiao Yan shouldn't keep it by his side." As she spoke, her gaze turned towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng immediately understood that Yan Mingyue wanted him to take action and help deal with the remnant soul of the Taotai in the ring. This way, Xiao Yan would be even more grateful. It would be even more logical for Lin Feng to take him as a disciple. Looking at it from another angle, wasn't this another test that Yan Mingyue was targeting him with? Lin Feng cursed in his heart. This woman really isn't easy to deal with. But he had to admit that if Lin Feng could really cleanly deal with the remnant soul of the Taotai, he could display his strength in front of Xiao Yan and attract him to take him as a disciple. Everything depends on whether Lin Feng has real ability. If he does, then this is a good thing with 100 benefits and no harm at all. Yan Mingyue clearly helped him out greatly. If he doesn't have ability, then it's showing his true colors. There's naturally nothing to say. Yan Mingyue looked at Lin Feng with a smile that wasn't a smile, actually carrying a somewhat mischievous expression of a little girl, but it gave Lin Feng a great headache. "Jackals from the same lair as that Long Yi. Neither of you are any good birds. Serves you right for both of you to suffer. Why don't you completely perish together and let the world have 2 less scourges?" Lin Feng cursed in his heart, but on the surface he still had the appearance of an unfathomable expert, smiling as he said, "Small matter, just leave it to this seat to deal with." Speaking without any trace of politeness, Lin Feng took the ring from Xiao Yan's hand. The more it's at a time like this, the more he can't show a guilty conscience and can't expose his actual situation. Lin Feng took the ring and sent his mana into it. His consciousness instantly entered an independent space. In the dark space, several dozen rays of light crisscrossed to form an enormous cage. Inside the cage, a vicious beast was currently roaring malevolently. The vicious beast's appearance was that of a goat's body and a human's face. Its eyes were under its armpits, tiger teeth and human claws. Its voice was like an infant's, continuously striking the cage formed by the rays of light. It was precisely the appearance of one of the 4 great vicious beasts of the immemorial era, the Taotai. Right now the rays of light were already very thin. Compared to the Taotai, it was simply like using a hemp rope as thick as a finger to tie up an elephant. If it wasn't for the cage formed by the rays of light emitting an integrated radiance to resist each time the Taotai struck, the rays of light would have been broken long ago. Lin Feng's scalp went numb seeing this. Even though this isn't a true Taotai and is only a remnant soul, its strength is at least at foundation establishment stage. It can also swallow all living things. It's far more terrifying than normal human foundation establishment stage cultivators. Yan Mingyue's cultivation was only at foundation establishment stage when she was heavily injured. If it wasn't for Taishu Temple's secret heaven cage sigil being incomparably profound, she basically wouldn't be able to trap this vicious beast. Xiao Yan's original Qi disciple level 12 Great Circle cultivation was forcibly sucked dry by this Taotai into trash. Lin Feng's current Qi disciple level 7 cultivation is being forced to do something beyond his ability. The pressure to deal with this vicious beast is not an ordinary kind of pressure. Ignoring the struggling and roaring Taotai, Lin Feng focused all of his attention on the cage of light formed by the heaven cage sigil. If he wants to take care of this vicious beast, the method probably still has to rely on the heaven cage sigil. Every time the Taotai struck, the rays of light would become a bit thinner, representing that a portion of the heaven cage sigil's mana was consumed. Back when Yan Mingyue first laid down the heaven cage sigil, the rays of light must have been very thick. Only after 3 years of consumption did it become like this. Understanding this point, Lin Feng had an idea. He started to try to pour his own mana into the Cage of Light, charging the cage and helping it to continue working. This is not an easy thing to do. The Heaven Cage Sigil is the signature spell of Taishu Temple. It looks like a simple cage of light on the outside, but the way the mana works inside is actually extremely complicated. Countless incantations and seals are working together, like an incomparably precise machine. As soon as Lin Feng poured his mana into it, it was like a cow charging into a flock of sheep. Not only did it not have the effect of replenishing, it instead almost affected the Heaven Cage Sigil's original normal operation. Lin Feng didn't dare to continue taking risks. He only poured a bit of mana into it, patiently feeling out the way the sigil works first. This is actually equivalent to learning the Heaven Cage Sigil's magical ability. But it's like a blind man touching an elephant, the learning efficiency is extremely low. Right now Lin Feng has no other choice. He's already been forced into a corner, he must succeed. Secretly competing with the Heaven Cage Sigil, Lin Feng had a calm and collected appearance on the surface, calmly looking at Xiao Yan. You made a 3-year promise with your fiancé. What plans do you have now? Some things, only when lost do you know how precious they are. Regaining what was lost will make people cherish it even more. Xiao Yan is like this. Knowing the reason for the huge change in his body, he has already regained his confidence. Leaving these 2 rings, his talent has definitely returned. But hearing the word fiancé, thinking of what happened before, Xiao Yan's expression still changed. He took a deep breath and said, "Of course I'm going to catch up and take back what I lost before." Lin Feng smiled slightly. Your talent is very good, but that girl's talent isn't bad either. You're improving, she's also improving, but her starting point is much higher than yours. Even if you once again return to the genius you were back then, according to your original cultivation speed, are you sure you can catch up to her within 3 years? Lin Feng's smile was unfathomable. Not to mention, she has the support of the Celerita's sword sect. Her Dao techniques and pill resources far surpass yours. Xiao Yan's heart moved, glancing at Lin Feng and then subconsciously looking at Yan Mingyue. Yan Mingyue smiled slightly. The grievances between you and Miss Murong, as an outsider, it's not my place to interfere too much. But the drastic change in your body is more or less related to me. I express my deep apologies here. I'll give you a Taishu Temple spell as compensation. Please forgive me, little friend. Lin Feng heard this from the side, secretly saying in his heart, good. Even though this girl is tricky, her character is still pretty good. Xiao Yan is also very happy. The spell that Yan Mingyue wants to pass on to him definitely won't be shabby. But his mood very quickly dropped. Even with this spell, will he definitely be able to defeat Murong Yenran in 3 years and wash away today's humiliation? He knows his own situation. Back then he spent 4 years to reach the peak of Qi Disciple level 12. Even if he regained his talent now, wanting to recover his strength would at least take 4 years. And the current Murong Yenran is already at Qi Disciple level 10. After 3 years, how high will her cultivation be? Even if the 2 of them are at the same realm, the Shao family Dao technique that he cultivates is only third-rate. Murong Yenran is the Celerita's sword sect's direct disciple, cultivating the Celerita's sword sect's top Dao technique, top divine abilities, eating a huge amount of pills without restraint. Maybe she even has a powerful magic item passed down by the sect. Letting out a dejected sigh, Xiao Yan secretly glanced at the smiling Lin Feng, his eyes slowly lighting up. Lin Feng's eyes also lit up. That's right, good disciple, quickly come to Master's Bowl. Chapter 20. Looking at Lin Feng, Xiao Yan asked, since you said this, does that mean you have a way for me to defeat Murong Yenran in 3 years? Lin Feng smiled, I have a way. But the final result depends on how determined you are and how much effort you can put in. A master can show you the way, but cultivation depends on yourself. A piece of rotten wood can never become a great person. Xiao Yan raised his eyebrows. I don't know if in your eyes, I am a piece of rotten wood that cannot be carved or a talent that can be made. But I dare to say that my determination will never waver. I will try my best. The young man in black's eyes were full of determination. No matter how much pain I have to endure, I will overcome all difficulties. Lin Feng nodded. In that case, you can be my disciple. I will accept you. I still need to be your disciple? Xiao Yan was a little hesitant. Lin Feng said matter-of-factly, as long as you become my disciple, I will teach you everything I know. What I want is a successor, not a half-hearted opportunist. Xiao Yan thought about it and was about to agree. Seeing that he was about to agree, Lin Feng's heart was instantly warmed. But then he felt a familiar wave of spiritual power approaching the lake. Turning his head to look, he saw a petite purple figure rushing towards him at lightning speed. Yan Mingyue also noticed it. She and Lin Feng both looked at the purple figure. Xiao Yan followed their gazes and was a little dazed. Is that Jin Air? Lin Feng secretly frowned. At such a crucial moment, the thing he's most afraid of is side issues. Even if Xiao Zhen's talent makes him incredibly envious, right now he also doesn't want her to get involved and add variables to the matter of him taking Xiao Yan as a disciple. I don't want to see other people, you go and see what she wants, I'll wait for you here. Lin Feng didn't allow for an explanation, directly ordering Xiao Yan to go and send Xiao Zhen away. Xiao Yan looked at Lin Feng, then looked at Yan Mingyue. Finally, he nodded and walked to Xiao Zhen, stopping her in the distance. Lin Feng could feel Xiao Zhen's scrutinizing gaze sweeping towards him, but not knowing what excuse Xiao Yan found, he brought her along and walked towards an even further place. Yan Mingyue looked at Xiao Zhen's back, her eyes brightened. My little friend Xiao Yan and this Miss Jin have a good relationship. This is another kind of opportunity. Lin Feng knew that she had been hiding in Xiao Yan's ring for the past 3 years, so she might have already noticed Xiao Zhen's abnormality. In one's life, meeting anyone is an opportunity. However, whether or not it will affect one's future is hard to say. Lin Feng said casually. Yan Mingyue glanced at him. Fellow Taoist Lin's way of thinking is a bit similar to that of Buddhism. Lin Feng smiled noncommittally. Right now, most of his energy was spent on the heaven cage sigil in the spatial ring. He tried to use his own mana to explore the principles of the heaven cage sigil, but the results were minimal. But thinking about it, if the heaven cage sigil could be seen through so easily, how could it become a secret ability of Taishu Temple? But right now, to Lin Feng, he must decipher the heaven cage sigil in a short period of time, otherwise the remnant Taotai soul will reappear. At that time, Yan Mingyue will make a move to suppress it again, but Lin Feng will expose himself. He naturally won't be able to keep pretending to be an otherworldly expert, and Xiao Yan, this disciple of his, will also lose everything. While they were talking, Xiao Budian stood obediently at the side. However, he was still a child who was not even 4 years old, and his attention was quickly drawn by a little red bird that flew across the surface of the lake. Lin Feng glanced at the restless little guy out of the corner of his eyes and said in a bad mood, "Go play by yourself, don't run too far." "Thank you, master." The little guy cheered and chased after the little red bird. Yan Mingyue stared at the little guy's receding figure and sighed in a low voice. "Fellow Taoist Lin, you said that it's not easy to take in a disciple, you are too modest. This little disciple of yours has a very high innate talent. It is truly rare in this world. Aside from one of my senior brothers, I have never seen it on anyone else." Lin Feng smiled without minding it. Fellow Taoist shouldn't say that in front of him. Children can't stand being praised and become complacent. It will be hard for him to change his mind. He secretly laughed in his heart. Although your Taishu temple is filled with geniuses and monsters are as many as dogs, the little guy in front of him still hasn't displayed his true talent. If he wasn't murdered by his clan brother, the little guy would have been at Foundation establishment from birth. However, Taishu Temple's heaven-defying talent reserve still made Lin Feng extremely envious. Before, he used the talent detector in the system tools to secretly test Yan Mingyue, but only received a system notification. Target meets the criteria, but has already taken someone else as a master. Need to remove the original master-disciple relationship before becoming host's direct disciple. Lin Feng said in his heart, "Looks like I can't take in someone who has already taken a master as a disciple. If I want to poach, I have to first encourage this person to betray his original sect before I can take in a disciple." Yan Mingyue lightly frowned. That seems to be a fire hummingbird. This type of spirit bird is extremely rare. I've only seen it at the gate of the Blaze Sword sect before. I've never heard of a fire hummingbird in this generation of Wuzhou. Lin Feng was busy studying the heaven cage sigil, casually responding, maybe someone brought it over. Halfway through his words, Lin Feng's voice abruptly stopped. Damn it, it's the Blaze Sword sect. Little red bird, don't run. The little guy eagerly chased behind the little red bird, turning around a small forest, only to see the little red bird land on the shoulder of a red-clothed person. The other party is standing in a group of red-clothed people, a dozen or so people standing together, mana surging all over their body, incomparably hot. Standing next to them is like standing next to the mouth of a volcano. Among them, the mana of two of them is as deep as the ocean, vast and endless. Impressively, they are Foundation Establishment stage cultivators. And at the front is a fierce-looking red-haired old man. He looks calm, but the pressure he brings to the little guy is even greater than all of the other people added together. Even though the little guy is small, he is precocious and his eyes are very sharp. With one glance he recognized a red-clothed youth standing in the crowd. It's precisely that Blaze Sword sect disciple that he shook off in the mountains back then. This person is respectfully saying to the red-haired old man, "Elderly, this is the child disciple saw before. Wearing out iron shoes in fruitless search, finding it by chance without even looking for it." The red-haired old man sized up the little guy, his gaze revealing a hint of amazement, slowly nodding his head. "Good, good. Sure enough, your talent is outstanding, your constitution is extraordinary." He walked in front of the little guy in large strides and said straightforwardly, "Kid, come with me, from today onwards you are a disciple of the Blaze Sword sect." The little guy blinked his eyes. "But old grandpa, I already have a master." The eyebrows of the red-haired elderly slightly raised. "Little kid doesn't know the rules. If I say you are a disciple of the Blaze Sword sect then you can only be. Old grandpa, I think it's better if I go." The little guy retreated a few steps, suddenly turning around and escaping. Elderly snorted coldly. A Foundation Establishment stage cultivator of the Blaze Sword sect stood out beside him, stretching out his palm and opening it. Mana turned into a sky full of flames, like a large cover directly trapping the little guy underneath. Chapter 21. The sky full of flames enveloped the little guy's front, back, left, right, and above his head, leaving no way out. The little guy wailed loudly, "You're a bad person, I'm not going with you guys." The Foundation Establishment stage cultivator frowned and said, "A wild child from a mountain village who doesn't know what's good for him. It's his good fortune that my Blaze Sword sect took him in, yet he's still mixing things up here. How annoying." "Zhang Nan, teach him a lesson right now. Teach him the rules so that when he gets back to the sect he won't make a scene. It's not embarrassing enough." The red-robed youth Zhang Nan, who first met the little guy, responded and walked towards the fire barrier. Looking at the little guy, Zhang Nan laughed coldly in his heart. "Brat, in the end you still have to fall into my hands." Back then in the mountains, being thrown off by the little guy already made him extremely unhappy. Now seeing that elderly decided to take the little guy as his disciple as soon as they met, Zhang Nan felt even more uncomfortable in his heart. Back then he was also considered a famous genius in his hometown, but to enter the Blaze Sword sect he still had to expend a lot of effort. And this brat who played around with him was easily taken in as a disciple, making the already narrow-minded Zhang Nan both jealous and hateful. The Foundation Establishment stage cultivator purposely opened a hole in the fire barrier to make it convenient for Zhang Nan to enter. Seeing that there was finally a hole in the fire barrier, the little guy immediately scurried up, wanting to escape with his life. Zhang Nan was waiting for this moment. He stepped forward and blocked the little guy's path. The little guy hurriedly said, "Get out of the way. Just stay inside." Zhang Nan laughed coldly and pushed a palm towards the little guy's chest. The space in the gap was limited. The little guy was unable to dodge and could only face the attack, also pushing a palm towards Zhang Nan. Zhang Nan secretly sneered. He could see that even though the little guy's escape technique was exquisite, he was after all only at the 4th level of Qi disciple. Going head on against him who was at the 6th level of Qi disciple is asking for trouble. While he was thinking, Zhang Nan suddenly saw Xiao Budian's palm turn over and grab his wrist. It turned out that Xiao Budian's forward push was just a feint. After grabbing Zhang Nan, his extraordinary physical strength suddenly burst out. Before Zhang Nan could even react, he was thrown over his head by the little guy. Like swinging a hammer, he heavily smashed onto the ground. The crowd of Blaze Sword sect cultivators were all dumbfounded. No one thought that Xiao Budian would actually be so ferocious. Seeing that Tiny Tot was about to run out of the fire barrier after knocking Zhang Nan over, the Foundation establishment stage cultivator who set up the fire barrier could no longer maintain his composure. With a cold snort, his vigorous magic power immediately overwhelmed Tiny Tot. The little guy laid on the ground and continuously struggled. Even though he was young, his physical strength was extremely powerful. At this moment, he went berserk and roared again and again, just like a young vicious beast. The Foundation establishment realm cultivator's face was ashen. He did not kill him, but in the end, he felt as if he could not suppress the little guy. Only now did Zhang Nan regain his composure. The laughter of his fellow disciples came from outside the fire barrier, and his old face immediately flushed red. He was furious in his heart as he turned over and crawled up, pouncing onto Xiao Budian's body. He slapped Xiao Budian's head, causing Xiao Budian's head to knock onto the ground. Zhang Nan cursed in a low voice, "Little bastard, I'll teach you the rules today." After saying that, he slapped Tiny Tot's body again and again. Tiny Tot only felt a burning pain on his body, but he did not cry nor did he shout out in pain, not making a single sound. Only because his master once said to him, "When you're at a disadvantage, the more you admit defeat, the happier your enemy will be and the more they will bully you. You can lose anything but your spirit. You have to be strong, you have to think of a way to turn defeat into victory." Seeing that not only did Tiny Tot not yield, but instead struggled more and more, Zhang Nan's ferocity was aroused. His strength rose to the extreme, a palm chopping towards the back of Tiny Tot's neck. "Stop right there." As soon as Lin Feng arrived, he saw the scene that made him furious. He hurriedly shouted loudly, like a clap of thunder exploding on the ground. Following the shout, a ray of resplendent northern aurora mystic light shot straight at the fire barrier. The violent lightning directly tore the fire barrier apart, turning it into a sky full of flowing fire that scattered in all directions. The lightning did not stop, striking straight at the dumbstruck Zhang Nan. On the Blaze Sword sect's side, a divine light flashed in Elder Li's eyes, coldly saying, "Insignificant tricks and you dare to come out and show off?" Raising his hand and pointing, a crimson-red sword aura shot out. It was only a hair's breadth away from Zhang Nan. The crimson-red sword aura blocked the northern aurora mystic light, shattering the lightning in midair. Lin Feng's pupils abruptly contracted. Golden elixir period. The northern aurora mystic light is the Foundation establishment stage magic item Northern Aurora Sword's strongest attack. Even with Lin Feng's own cultivation, he is unable to activate it. He must rely on the Heaven Thunder Moon Jade to be able to use it. It is equivalent to the full power attack of a peak Foundation establishment stage cultivator. It is Lin Feng's strongest trump card. He saw the mana fluctuations of the fire barrier from far away and knew that it was the technique of a Foundation establishment stage cultivator. If he wants to save people, he must first break the fire barrier. That's why Lin Feng used a big move right from the start and sure enough broke the fire barrier in one hit. But right now the Northern Aurora Mystic Light was casually broken by that red-haired old man's sword. Lin Feng's heart also subsequently sank to the bottom. Every large realm is a huge dividing line, a heavenly moat that is hard to cross for ordinary people. Don't mention that right now Lin Feng is only Qi Disciple level 7, even if he succeeds in Foundation establishment, facing elderly in the Golden Elixir period, he would only be delivering food. There is simply no way to make up for such a large gap. The difference in strength is like the difference between heaven and earth, allowing elderly to ignore all schemes and methods and directly crush Lin Feng. Lin Feng faced a group of Blaze Sword sect cultivators who were glaring at him like tigers watching their prey. The cold sweat on his back had already drenched his clothes. "Master!" Lin Feng's attack before was also not completely useless. The aftermath of the collision between the Crimson Red Sword Aura and the Northern Aurora Mystic Light directly overturned Zhang Nan, who was pressing down on Xiao Budian. Xiao Budian struggled to get up, running towards Lin Feng. But he had just run out 2 steps when his body abruptly paused. In the next moment he flew backwards and landed in Elder Li's hands. The red-haired old man grabbed him by the collar and lifted him into the air. Being grabbed by this old man, Xiao Budian only felt powerless all over his body. He was unable to use all of his mana and powerful physical strength. Xiao Budian's 4 limbs helplessly struggled in the air. "Let me go, let me go. You bad old man. Master, master, quickly save me, master." Lin Feng tasted bitterness in his mouth, forcefully pulling himself together and maintaining the demeanor of an expert on the surface, coldly looking at the group of Blaze Sword Sect cultivators. The Grand Blaze Sword Sect, also considered to be one of the 9 Heaven Sword Alliance. "You actually bully a child?" Elder Li smiled coldly. "Just a wandering cultivator, a mere peak foundation establishment stage cultivation. You think you're worthy of showing off your tongue in front of me? This kid's natural talent is extraordinary. Learning from you is simply like casting pearls before swine, and it's a waste of his natural talent. I took him into my sword sect precisely so that his natural talent wouldn't be wasted, and it's his fortune and luck. As for you..." Elder Li curled his lips in disdain. "Today I took in a good disciple. I'm in a good mood, so I won't argue with you. Hurry up and scram as far as you can. From today onwards, you're not allowed to appear in front of me, otherwise I'll cut you down with 1 strike of my sword. I want to see who dares to say bad things about me." He casually glanced at Lin Feng. This is still because of that Northern Aurora Mystic Light of Lin Feng before, otherwise he wouldn't even deign to look at Lin Feng. But just this glance made Lin Feng instantly feel as if he was placed in a 10,000-year-old ice cave. A strong sense of life and death crisis that he had never felt before instantly emerged from the bottom of his heart. He had never felt that he was so close to death, his life withering and his soul being destroyed. The pressure of a golden elixir period cultivator exerted on a Qi disciple level 7 cultivator, just this pressure alone would be enough to shatter the opponent's bones. Lin Feng's fingers moved a bit. He had the urge to clench his fists, but he restrained himself at the first moment and relaxed again. Right now Lin Feng's heart was fighting with himself. What should I do? Should I endure it? The difference in strength between us is too great. If I fight, I'll definitely be killed by this old man. If he can't complete the system's mission within a year and can't gather 4 disciples, he will of course be killed by the system, but if he doesn't back down today, he might immediately die. For a gentleman to take revenge, 10 years is not too late. I'll endure it for today. When my cultivation is higher in the future, I'll have this old man pay me back double. Knowing that I'm not his opponent and still going head-on, that's not bravery, that's idiocy. Lin Feng continuously convinced himself in his heart, but when he met the little guy's clear gaze, he suddenly couldn't continue. In the eyes of a 4-year-old child, there was no fear, no worry, only endless hope. It was as if he never worried that his master would not be the opponent of the enemy, and even more so never thought that his master would give up on him. Lin Feng suddenly clenched his fists tightly, roaring in his heart, "Fuck, idiocy is idiocy, Laozi didn't cross over to be someone's grandson. What's the point of living if I'm so useless? If you don't die, you'll live for tens of thousands of years, just one word." Lin Feng's action of clenching his fists was keenly noticed by Elder Li. He sneered, "Looks like you want to seek your own death, then this old man will help you." With one hand grabbing the little guy, the other hand formed a sword with his fingers. A dazzling fiery red sword aura began to condense at the tip of his fingers. Unlike his juniors who used their flying swords, Elder Li had already completely refined his flying sword into a blazing sword aura. Man and sword as one, his strength was on a completely different level. The sword aura was like a dancing flame. It had not yet been released, but it was already emitting a terrifying and peerless aura of power. Within a circumference of a few hundred meters, all of the vegetation had already withered, and a large amount of water had evaporated. Lin Feng stood in place. The air he breathed into his lungs felt like it was about to burn. The waves of dizziness in the scorching hot environment were actually the signs of dehydration. He could even see a large amount of water vapor rising from the surface of the small lake in the distance, like clouds and mist. This was the terrifying strength of a golden elixir period cultivator. Once Elder Li's sword was released, it was enough to flatten the entire area around the small lake in the north of the city. Lin Feng licked his cracked lips. Right now, he was the direct target of this sword. Chapter 22. Facing Elder Li's upcoming terrifying attack, Lin Feng took a deep breath, fearless. Since he's already made his decision, then there's nothing to be afraid of. Lin Feng also retracted the mana he used to explore the Heaven Cage sigil. Even if he does it, he won't do it recklessly. Instead, he will use all possible power. He already has an idea, which is to simply destroy the already tottering Heaven Cage sigil and release that Taotai remnant soul. It's very hard to judge what Yan Mingyue will do. The only way for Lin Feng to face a terrifying golden elixir period cultivator by himself is to muddy the waters. Only when the situation is chaotic can there be the possibility of fishing in troubled waters. Just as Lin Feng retracted his mana from the Heaven Cage sigil, the long-awaited system notification suddenly sounded in his mind. The host's own analysis failed. Do you want to activate the system tool, Ability Analyzer? Lin Feng subconsciously pressed yes. The system immediately reacted. System tool, Ability Analyzer activated. Up until now, the Super Founder system has a total of 3 subsystems, respectively the Exchange System, Lottery System, and Disciple System. Other than this, there is also a System tool, which is the Talent Detector, specifically used to detect the target's cultivation talent and categorize it by bone structure, comprehension, will, and fortune, and make a numerical summary. And now the newly activated Ability Analyzer's function is to help Lin Feng analyze a certain type of ability and analyze its structure and principles. The goal is to help Lin Feng master this ability in the shortest amount of time. The Ability Analyzer also has a limit. The analysis needs a certain amount of time. For example, the attack of the Blaze Sword Sect Elder Li right now, after his power exploded out, the attack ended. In such a short amount of time, the Ability Analyzer is unable to analyze the spell and ability he used. So this system tool is mainly aimed at formations and sigil-type abilities that have a long-term effect, abilities that exist for a long period of time. For example, the Heaven Cage Sigil. Lin Feng activated the Ability Analyzer without hesitation and started to analyze the Heaven Cage Sigil. At the same time, a thought flashed through his mind and he had a bold plan. Secretly making preparations, on the surface Lin Feng was still as steady as a mountain, standing on the spot expressionlessly, calmly facing Elder Li's secret technique of the Blaze Sword Sect Meteor Shower Sword. Judging from his appearance, it could be said that he was scared out of his wits. Zhang Nan sneered and said to Xiao Budian, "Look carefully, that master of yours is just trash in front of our Blaze Sword Sect." The little guy did not pay attention to Zhang Nan. His large eyes nervously stared at Lin Feng. Once Elder Li's Flying Meteor Sword's Divine Sword technique was unleashed, it was mighty and unstoppable. The little guy's confidence was no longer that great. Compared to Elder Li's great momentum, Lin Feng's side did not make any movements at all, making it hard for people to have confidence in him. The other party's arrogance rose higher and higher, already gradually approaching the peak. Lin Feng knows very well that Elder Li's Flying Meteor Sword actually does not need such a long build-up time. The reason why he wanted to put on such a stance was not to intimidate Lin Feng. In his eyes, Lin Feng is already a dead man. What he wants to intimidate is Xiao Budian. Elder Li wants to completely subdue Xiao Budian and let Xiao Budian realize the enormous gap between Lin Feng and the Blaze Sword Sect. After witnessing the strength of the Blaze Sword Sect, he will be willing to take him as his master and learn. Finally, Elder Li's momentum has already reached the peak. His index and middle fingers stood together like a sword, pointing straight at Lin Feng. The flames on his fingertips exploded with a loud bang, turning into thousands of blazing sword auras, swaying in the air with long tails of flames. It was as if thousands of fire dragons were roaring and charging out, blotting out the sky and covering the earth as they pounced towards Lin Feng. Some of the sword auras that were close to the ground brought about a powerful force during their flight, directly plowing out several dozen deep trenches on the ground. What kind of power is this? Each sword aura can destroy a small mountain. Each sword aura is equivalent to the full power attack of a foundation establishment stage cultivator. Each one is not something that the current Lin Feng can block. And right now there are hundreds and thousands of these sword auras, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. Wherever the sword auras passed through, a stretch of scorched earth was left. The berserk power at this moment shook this entire Wuzhou city. Xiao Budian opened his eyes wide. "Master, show them what you're made of." Elder Li, who was grabbing onto him, coldly snorted. "Little kid, open your eyes wide and look clearly. This is the true method of immortals." Xiao Zhen'er and Xiao Yan were also alarmed at this time and hurried over. Xiao Yan saw the scene of thousands of sword auras flying and his expression changed greatly. Golden elixir period cultivator. "Little big brother, the master that you want to acknowledge, I'm afraid it's all bark and no bite." Xiao Zhen'er frowned as he stared at Lin Feng, who still didn't have the slightest reaction, as if he was stunned, hesitating in his heart. Should I save him? Yan Mingyue has actually been hiding at the side the whole time. All of her attention was focused on Lin Feng. If you have any methods, you should use them now or else it'll be too late. The others were all shaken to the core. Lin Feng, who is at the center of the storm, only has one feeling right now, and that is heat. It's incomparably hot, as if he's in a furnace. His entire body is about to be burned to ashes. In his line of sight is a field of fiery red. The dazzling scarlet sword aura made him unable to open his eyes. Lin Feng can already smell the scent of death. "Open!" Right at the same time Elder Li attacked, Lin Feng's mana surged, attacking from both inside and outside with the Taotai, forcefully breaking the heaven cage sigil in the ring. "I'm out. I'm finally out. Yan Mingyue, if I don't eat you, it'll be hard to dispel the hatred in my heart." An ear-piercing voice continuously rang out in Lin Feng's mind. The ring in the center of his palm is like a black hole, emitting a huge suction force, wanting to swallow everything in its surroundings that it can come into contact with. Lin Feng immediately felt his mana surge uncontrollably towards the ring at this moment, like a flood after a dam has burst, madly pouring down. In front of his eyes, the hundreds and thousands of blazing sword auras are already very close at hand, and there's also a black hole continuously swallowing his mana. Lin Feng, who is trapped from both inside and outside, instead revealed a smile on his face, calmly putting the ring on his finger. Lin Feng calmly stretched out his right hand and pushed forward, as if wanting to block the blazing fires surging towards him. "Overestimating yourself." All of the Blaze Sword sect cultivators revealed a disdainful expression. A foundation establishment stage cultivator wanting to block the sword path divine ability of a golden elixir period cultivator like this is practically asking to be humiliated. His only result is to be burned into charcoal. The crowd of Blaze Sword sect cultivators seem to have already seen the first sword aura attacking towards Lin Feng, chopping off his outstretched right hand. Following that is the second, the third. The hundreds and thousands of sword auras will first dismember his corpse into thousands of pieces, then the sword auras will turn into blazing fire, burning this little wandering cultivator who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth to ashes. What a perfect scene! Elder Li and the others watched with a smile, but as they watched, their smiles all froze on their faces. What did they see? When Elder Li's incomparably violent sword aura came into contact with Lin Feng's outstretched palm, it suddenly disappeared. That's right, it disappeared without a sound, without a trace. There was no violent collision, there was no astonishing aura, it just silently disappeared from their line of sight just like that. Following that, the second, the third. Lin Feng's palm at this moment was like a bottomless abyss, silently and resolutely swallowing the hundreds and thousands of sword auras emitted by Elder Li's meteor shower sword. The next moment, the lakeside was completely silent. The two sides were still standing face to face, as if the meteor shower sword that was enough to flatten an area of several miles nearby had never appeared. Only the dry and hot air that still remained in the air and the pitch-black and messy ground proved that it had indeed existed before. A clear and crisp child's voice suddenly emerged from the silent crowd. Master is so awesome. It was precisely Xiao Budian. Even though he was hung in midair by the collar by Elder Li, the little guy was still dancing and cheering for Lin Feng. This is impossible. Only now did the crowd of Blaze Sword Sect cultivators come to their senses, all of them in an uproar. Elder Li even more so stared at Lin Feng with a pair of bull eyes, making sounds from his throat but unable to say anything. Only now did Lin Feng let out a sigh of relief. His back was already completely drenched. The suction force from the ring on his finger became extremely weak. The whispers of the Ta entered his ears. Delicious, so delicious. I've made up for all the losses these few years. But I still want to continue eating. While speaking, Lin Feng felt the suction force from the ring become stronger once again. Chapter 23. From start to finish, the expression on Lin Feng's face did not change in the slightest, calmly and indifferently looking at the group of Blaze Sword Sect cultivators in front of him. A moment ago, this kind of expression of his was thought by people to be scared silly by Elder Li's monstrous offensive. But now, after Elder Li's overbearing meteor blaze sword was dissolved into nothingness, everyone's expression changed. Elder Li's head of scarlet hair flew in the air, swinging his hand and throwing Xiao Budian to the Blaze Sword Sect cultivators behind him. Then without saying a word he walked forward in large strides towards Lin Feng. The cold smile that was originally disdainful on his face has already disappeared. What replaced it was incomparable seriousness and sternness. The red-haired old man flipped his palm, endless flames gushed out. In the next instant it rapidly condensed again, transforming into a dark red sword of light in the center of his palm. The sword of light looks very ordinary. There is only a hint of dim luster circulating on the sword's edge. But the pressure that this sword of light brings to Lin Feng far surpasses that of the monstrous meteor blaze sword from before. That was because the old man had taken out his trump card this time. His entire body's vigorous magic power was condensed on this light sword, and his power was compressed to the extreme. The blazing fire magic power did not leak out in the slightest. Instead, it was still absorbing heat from the surrounding air. The originally unbearably hot air cooled down at this moment. The group of Blaze Sword Sect cultivators gathered together naturally formed endless heat, but right now it has also completely disappeared. It's not that they restrained their mana aura, but that even this heat was absorbed by Elder Li's Sword of Light. The seemingly ordinary Sword of Light at this moment faintly exuded a heart-palpitating power, a kind of destructive concept. Lin Feng gazed at the Sword of Light. He is certain that if he was hit by this sword he would not be wrapped in flames. There wouldn't even be a process of being burned. Instead he would directly be turned into ashes and dust. The instant he was hit by the sword he would be vaporized by the violent high temperature. If this sword landed in a small lake far away, tens of thousands of cubic meters of lake water would evaporate in an instant. If it landed on the city wall of Wuzhou City, it can split half of Wuzhou City in one strike. The serious Elder Li did not waste any more words. The light sword in his hand pointed straight at Lin Feng. Lin Feng was well aware that if he were to compete with this golden elixir period cultivator in terms of reaction speed, he would be courting death. Therefore, when Elder Li pointed his sword at him, Lin Feng retracted his right hand that was wearing the ring to his chest. Having learned his lesson from the meteor sword, the old man would definitely not disperse his power this time. Instead, he would focus all of his attacks on a single point. Lin Feng was betting on where Elder Li would attack. If he guessed wrongly, the ring would not be able to protect him and he would definitely die. From the moment Lin Feng decided not to back down and resolutely fought against the Blaze Sword Sect, he had already expected that he would face a hopeless situation where he had a slim chance of survival. But this instead stimulated his fighting spirit. He wanted to use all his strength to carve out a path for himself. At this moment, Lin Feng's heart almost stopped beating. At the same time, the red-haired old man disappeared. His speed was so fast that Lin Feng could not react at all. Elder Li had already arrived in front of him. The dark red light sword was just inches away. Lin Feng roared madly in his heart. He gambled correctly. The light sword was stabbing towards his chest. If he did not anticipate the enemy's move first and acted ahead of time, Lin Feng would not be able to block this killing blow at all. But right now everything is different. A powerful suction force erupted from the ring, madly swallowing the mana contained in Elder Li's light sword. The angry roar of the Taotai passed by Lin Feng's ears. "Little thief, you dare to use me? If I don't die today, I will definitely eat you." Right now Elder Li's face was livid, feeling his mana rapidly flowing away. The Taotai in the ring swallowed Elder Li's mana with all its might. On one hand it was because it was a glutton, it would rather eat to death than give up the delicacy in front of its mouth. On the other hand it was because the Taotai was already in a difficult position right now. If it gave up at this time it would block the spear for Lin Feng and be the first to be eliminated by Elder Li's light sword. Elder Li's speed was too fast to the point that by the time the people at the scene saw his movements clearly, the light sword had already stabbed into Lin Feng's chest. Right now the light sword was like a black hole, all of the light rays that entered it disappeared. When people looked over they immediately felt their mind become unsteady, as if their entire soul was about to be sucked into it. The cultivators of the Blaze Sword sect all let out a cheer. "You're still not dead this time?" The group of people were wild with joy as they watched Elder Li succeed, so excited that their eyeballs were all red. But after a moment the cheers abruptly stopped, only leaving behind a trace of the ending sound trembling in the air. Because they shockingly discovered that the Lin Feng who was hit by the sword was actually still standing there perfectly fine, safe and sound. Instead, Elder Li's light sword was rapidly withering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Lin Feng still did not move in the slightest. There was also not the slightest bit of mana fluctuation around his body. He calmly stood where he was, calmly looking at Elder Li as if he was looking at a clown amusing himself. The next moment Elder Li's light sword disappeared, the arm that was stabbing forward still blankly extended in front of Lin Feng. The old man's face was full of shock. His head of red hair that was originally flying around like raging fire also lost its vigor at this moment, drooping on his shoulders. He used all of his strength, but the other person seemed to not care at all. At this moment Elder Li finally felt fear. "I made an error of judgment. This person's cultivation is so high that it's completely not something I can contend against. It's practically like a child facing a grown man. Run, we must run, everyone must run. Otherwise when the opponent makes a move we'll all die." Elder Li wanted to retreat, but at this time Lin Feng, who had not spoken all along, finally spoke. "Little guy, have you messed around enough?" Lin Feng retracted his right hand that was at his chest. At this moment it once again extended out. His index and middle fingers also stood side by side like a sword, forming a sword seal and thrusting towards Elder Li. Only Lin Feng could hear the raging roar of the Taotai in the ring. "I can't take it anymore, I can't take it anymore." The scarlet-red sword aura that was swallowed by the Taotai condensed the purest power of a golden elixir period cultivator. The Taotai right now was only a remnant soul. Its appetite in the end has its limits. Not only was it unable to swallow this sword aura, it was instead heavily injured by the sword aura. Helpless, the Taotai could only spit out the sword aura once again. "Since you've messed around enough, I'll return your thing to you." The red light on Lin Feng's fingertip exploded. A dark red sword that was exactly the same as the one Elder Li used before appeared on his fingertip, flying towards Elder Li. Elder Li's face was like he had seen a ghost. He had no time to dodge at all and was pierced by Lin Feng's sword. The sword light exploded inside Elder Li's body. The raging fire elemental mana wreaked havoc. Balls of raging fire shot out from Elder Li's 7 orifices. A large amount of fire elephant's spiritual essence gushed out from the pores all over his body, burning all his clothes in a flash. The completely naked old man was both ashamed and angry, but he did not dare to make the slightest movement. He just stood straight where he was, circulating his chi to bitterly resist the raging fire in his body. Any bit of carelessness and he'll be burnt into charcoal. Even the little guy who had the most confidence in Lin Feng right now was also staring dumbstruck at the scene in front of him. Only after a long while did he spit out a few words from between his teeth. "Master, so strong." The group of Blaze Sword sect cultivators around him were all dumbstruck, involuntarily nodding their heads when they heard what was said. When they reacted, they were all incomparably embarrassed, but they looked at each other and had nothing to say. What did they see? In this battle, Lin Feng actually did not make a move from start to finish. He just stood where he was without moving, not blocking nor dodging, allowing Elder Li to use all of his methods to attack as he wished. He didn't use any spells or abilities, nor did he fight in the martial way. It's just you hitting me, I don't move. When I get irritated, I'll casually throw your attack back and directly press you down onto the ground. In the distance, Xiao Yan was also shocked, speechless right now. That red-haired old man is a genuine golden elixir period cultivator, and he's even a golden elixir period cultivator of a large sect like the Blaze Sword sect. The highest level cultivator Xiao Yan has seen before is the city lord of Wuzhou City. Even that is only at the golden elixir realm, and it can't even compare to the elderly in front of him. But it's this kind of great cultivator that in front of Lin Feng he completely did not have the strength to fight back. If I can acknowledge him as my master, thinking up to here, Xiao Yan's heart burned with passion. He thought of 3 years later, the Celerita's sword sect's Murong Yenran, thought of the opponent that caused his father's heavy injuries and death. Xiao Zhen also looked in shock at Lin Feng, who still had an indifferent face, her eyes shining with extraordinary splendor. I also made the mistake of underestimating the people of the world. In this world there is always someone better than you, there is always someone better. It's a pity that my family won't accept Xiao Yan Gij, but if he can acknowledge this senior as his master, his future will definitely be great. Right now everyone present was shocked, speechless. Only Lin Feng was as calm as before, raising his eyes and looking towards the group of Blaze Sword sect cultivators, his gaze staring at Xiao Budian in the crowd. Being looked at like this by him, everyone in the Blaze Sword sect shuddered all over, retreating in unison. The area around Xiao Budian's body instantly became empty. Chapter 24. Silently Lin Feng's gaze looked over. All of the Blaze Sword sect cultivators seemed to have been stung by a scorpion, hurriedly distancing themselves from the little guy. The gaze of a Foundation establishment stage cultivator flashed, his retreating body stopped and wanted to pounce towards the little guy again. They have to take this hostage, otherwise they won't be able to escape unscathed. Lin Feng glanced at him and lightly said, "From now on, if my disciple loses a hair, you guys leave one life behind." The body of the Foundation establishment stage cultivator instantly froze on the spot, not daring to move at all. Seeing this, Lin Feng secretly let out a sigh of relief. Right now his body's condition is also extremely terrible. Even though the Taotai swallowed Elder Li's attack, just the aftermath of the attack of a golden elixir period great cultivator is already unbearable for Lin Feng. After that Elder Li's mana surpassed the Taoye's devouring limit, the Taotai was forced to spit out all of the mana it swallowed. Not only the dark red sword of light, even the mana of the meteorite sword from before was also released. A considerable portion of it flowed into Lin Feng's body. Right now his insides are also burning, only feeling that all of the blood in his body is about to boil and bubble. Right at this time, the Taoye's devouring power once again appeared from the ring on his finger. Even though it was heavily injured by Elder Li and the strength of the Taotai, who was originally only a remnant soul, greatly decreased, its gluttonous nature has not changed. Just having caught its breath, its first reaction was to eat. "When I recover my strength, I'll definitely swallow you whole." The Taotai roared angrily from within the ring. Lin Feng laughed coldly, "I'm afraid you don't have such good teeth." Finishing speaking, Lin Feng's mana rushed into the ring, turning into several tens of light pillars that crisscrossed and instantly formed an enormous cage, locking the Taotai inside. The Taotai roared and pounced towards the cage, wanting to devour the mana that formed the light pillars. But the essence of the light pillars circulated and the entire cage shone brightly together, firmly suppressing the Tao. After a momentary daze, the Taotai instantly flew into a rage. "It's the Heaven Cage sigil again. You're also from Taishu Temple? What? I'm so angry. One day, I'll swallow all of you bastards from the Taishu Temple." Lin Feng ignored its clamor, feeling gratified in his heart. The system tools were indeed extraordinary. Through the ability analyzer, he was able to analyze the mysteries of the Heaven Cage sigil in a short time. This was a secret of the Taishu Temple, and now Lin Feng was able to learn it as soon as he learned it. That was why he was able to use the Tao Tai as a shield and restrain it. Otherwise, even if he could get past Elder Li, he would still be sucked dry by the Tao Tai. Lin Feng looked at Elder Li, whose skin was flushed red and was constantly emitting white steam. The other party was now like a cooked prawn. Secretly calling himself lucky in his heart, Lin Feng knows that the reason why he was able to succeed in one strike is more because he soundlessly and forcefully took on Elder Li's strongest attack. The result was too shocking, making this Aurus core stage cultivator panic. Not only was he unable to dodge Lin Feng's counterattack, he didn't even have time to defend, and just took a sword head-on like this. This sword was completely equivalent to the full power attack of a golden elixir period cultivator at the same level as Elder Li. The old ghost took it without any defense. Not dying was already very lucky. The little guy dashed to his side and said with a smile, "Master, that move of yours just now was very powerful. Can you teach me?" Lin Feng patted his little head. "You won't be able to learn it now. Work hard and Master will naturally pass it on to you in the future." Finished speaking, Lin Feng raised his head and looked at Zhang Nan in the crowd, his voice slightly cold. "You just beat up this lord's disciple. Did you have a good time?" Lin Feng was extremely unhappy with Zhang Nan. If it wasn't for this guy, why would he need to risk his life against a golden elixir period cultivator? Zhang Nan's mind was in a trance. His attention was still stuck on the unbelievable fact that Elder Li was defeated. Right now, meeting Lin Feng's gaze, he instantly felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. "Hey, Senior, I just..." Zhang Nan's face was ashen. He couldn't even speak fluently. The group of Blaze Sword sect cultivators beside him all retreated to the side at this time, as if avoiding snakes and scorpions. Their gazes staring at Zhang Nan became more and more unfriendly. It's all this guy's fault. If it wasn't for him, how would Elder Li have suffered such a calamity? How would we have had such a disaster? Before Elder Li was defeated, no one would have thought that it would be this kind of result. All of the Blaze Sword sect cultivators thought that they could easily take in the little guy, this genius disciple. That wandering cultivator master of the little guys better be sensible, or else they'll teach him a lesson and let him know the power of the Blaze Sword sect. But at this moment, everyone was regretting, their hearts were stifled and uncomfortable. The unfathomable Lin Feng was really too scary, making them only want to get as far away from this monster as possible. The gap between the two sides was too big, making them only feel fear. They didn't even dare to give birth to hatred. The accumulated evil fire needed a way to be vented. Zhang Nan, who first caused the incident, naturally became the punching bag of his fellow sect members. A Foundation establishment stage cultivator stared at Zhang Nan, his face ashen as he said, "It's all because of you." The other Foundation establishment stage cultivator did not say a word, directly throwing out a slap and sending Zhang Nan flying. Poor Zhang Nan was already sent flying before he could even react. His body even made a few high-difficulty somersaults in midair before finally fiercely crashing onto the ground. Beating up your own disciple in front of outsiders is actually a very demoralizing and embarrassing thing. Unable to beat the other but venting on your own disciple, unable to protect your own disciple, and even using your disciple as a scapegoat, this kind of sect undoubtedly easily loses cohesion and easily causes the sect's disciples to drift apart. But when this Foundation establishment stage cultivator viciously slapped Zhang Nan, at this moment all of the Blaze Sword sect disciples cheered loudly in their hearts, only feeling that it was a good hit. This kind of scourge should be viciously beaten up. He really deserved it. The pressure that Lin Feng brought them already made it impossible for them to think calmly. They only felt that there was a breath in their hearts that they couldn't hold back. If they didn't vent it, it would make them go crazy. Lin Feng looked at the half-dead Zhang Nan and couldn't help but secretly grin. This Foundation establishment stage cultivator really didn't hold back, one slap taking away half of Zhang Nan's life. "I won't make things difficult for you today, but this doesn't mean that the matter is over." Lin Feng looked at Zhang Nan and said indifferently, "The reason I let you go today is to leave you for my disciple, to give him the chance to personally take revenge." Lin Feng lowered his head and looked at the little guy. "How is it?" The little guy looked at Zhang Nan, who was like a dead dog, and lightly snorted. He's like this right now, even if I beat him it wouldn't count as skill. After a few days when I learn some skills from Master, I'll find him and take revenge myself. Lin Feng thought in his heart that beating a dog when it's down is the right thing to do, but he wasn't worried about the little guy at all. Instead he was silently mourning for Zhang Nan in his heart. Nonsense, what good ending can an enemy who is remembered by the one chosen by the heavens have? Lin Feng once again raised his head and looked at the people of the Blaze Sword sect, calmly saying, "Did you all listen to my disciples' words? Keep a close eye on this person. One day I'll bring Tianhao to your Blaze Sword sect and completely settle this matter." The two leading Foundation establishment stage cultivators couldn't help but nod their heads. Looking at the expressions of the Foundation establishment stage cultivators and the way they looked at Zhang Nan, Lin Feng snickered in his heart. With those words of his just now, even if the little guy forgets about this small fry in the future, Zhang Nan's days in the Blaze Sword sect in the future will definitely be worse than death. Lin Feng glanced at Elder Li from the corner of his eyes. Right now the old man is about to catch his breath, but with his injuries he can only be considered to have half a life left. Looking at Lin Feng sizing him up, Elder Li wanted to die from shame and anger, wishing that he could find a hole in the ground to crawl into. Lin Feng did not continue to make things difficult for him, his chin lightly nodding. "Take your elder and leave, don't appear in front of me again." The group of Blaze Sword sect cultivators acted as if they were being pardoned, hurriedly picking up Elder Li and leaving like a wisp of smoke. Yan Mingyue, dressed in a green gown, her soul once again appeared in midair, looking at Lin Feng with a complicated gaze, for a moment actually somewhat speechless. She gave the ring with the Tao Tai sealed in it to Lin Feng to deal with. This was more than just a help and a test. Other than this, there was also a third meaning of probing, killing 3 birds with 1 stone. As long as Lin Feng touches the Heaven Cage sigil in the ring and Yan Mingyue will sense the mana she left behind, she will be able to clearly figure out the depth of Lin Feng's strength as well as the origin of the Taoist technique inheritance. At the start Lin Feng only used a tiny bit of mana to probe the Heaven Cage sigil. Yan Mingyue also did not pay attention to it. But later on Yan Mingyue actually suddenly lost her connection with the Heaven Cage sigil. She naturally did not know that Lin Feng used an ability analyzer, only feeling that Lin Feng discovered her scheme and thus cut off the connection between her and the Heaven Cage sigil. Next the Blaze Sword sect's Elder Li took the stage and was easily defeated by Lin Feng. Of everyone present, only Yan Mingyue knows that Lin Feng made use of the Taoya's power. But she does not dare to underestimate Lin Feng in the slightest because of this. Instead she feels that it is precisely in order to not let her see through Lin Feng that he used the Tao Tai to face the enemy. In reality it is also precisely so. In an intense battle Yan Mingyue was unable to see through just what realm Lin Feng is at and also did not see through the origin of Lin Feng's Taoist technique. From what Yan Mingyue sees, in that exchange just now the two parties fighting were actually Lin Feng and her. She wanted to clearly figure out Lin Feng's strength, while Lin Feng did not want to let her get what she wanted. That red-haired elder of the Blaze Sword sect was nothing more than a tool for their confrontation. The result was naturally a crushing defeat for her. Facing a golden elixir period cultivator Lin Feng was able to not reveal any of his strength and instead used the remnant soul of the Tao Tai that she gave to take care of the opponent. This made Yan Mingyue feel a sense of defeat like going for wool but coming home shorn. Even those 2 sentences that Lin Feng said to Elder Li, Yan Mingyue even felt that Lin Feng was actually saying it to her. "Little guy, have you messed around enough? Since you've messed around enough I'll return your things to you." These 2 sentences made Yan Mingyue's heart that has always been as calm as an ancient well give birth to a bit of anger and humiliation. She is not a normal Taishu Temple disciple. Even in Taishu Temple, that #1 holy land throughout the ages, she is also in existence like a daughter of the heavens. From when she was young until now no one has been able to make her feel so distressed. Even that old enemy Long Yi who fought her to a stalemate also has never done it. At this moment Yan Mingyue no longer underestimated Lin Feng in the slightest and instead treated him as an opponent that must be taken seriously. Lin Feng was a bit baffled by Yan Mingyue's gaze. If he knew what was going through Yan Mingyue's mind, he would only give one sentence of evaluation. One of the 100 ways an expert can die, you're thinking too much. Right now all of Lin Feng's attention is placed on Xiao Yan, who is rushing over, muttering in his heart, "The second one, the second one." Chapter 25. After Xiao Yan performed the ceremony of apprenticeship, hearing the system notification sound in his ear, Lin Feng's entire body felt a bit weak. Congratulations, host, for taking in the second personal disciple Xiao Yan. Host has received a chance to draw the lottery, received a reward of 500 exchange points. Lin Feng looked at Xiao Yan in front of him, sighing in his heart, "This time I really had to risk my life to get it done." In the disciple system, other than Xiao Budian, there is also Xiao Yan's information. Name: Xiao Yan, age 15 years and 1 month, current cultivation. Qi disciple level 1, potential attribute, root bone 8, comprehension 9, willpower 9, fortune 8. Note: has a special talent in alchemy and medicine refining. Recommended education plan: recommended to train in fire Dao techniques. In terms of divine ability, it is recommended to take the martial path as the main direction of development. Recommended to raise his alchemy level, has a lot of potential. Even though he is not like Xiao Budian, who has an attribute that is directly max out, but Xiao Yan is even better in terms of comprehension and willpower. All 4 attributes are very outstanding, and he also has an additional talent in alchemy. It's just that the system recommends Xiao Yan to train in fire Dao techniques. Seeing this, Lin Feng secretly frowned. The system has undoubtedly given the most suitable education plan, but Lin Feng only has 1 9 Heavens Thunder technique on hand. Where does he go to find a fire Dao technique? And it must be a rather exquisite fire Dao technique, otherwise how can Xiao Yan be convinced? Even if Xiao Yan doesn't say anything, this little girl in purple in front of him won't let it go. Xiao Zhen looked at Xiao Yan with a face full of reluctance, then turned to Lin Feng and asked, "Senior, are you bringing Xiao Yan Gij away from Wuzhou?" Lin Feng smiled faintly. "I won't stay here for long. When your brother Xiao Yan is done with his family matters, we should leave." After a pause, Lin Feng looked at Xiao Yan and continued, "There is a very difficult goal waiting for him to complete. For him, there is not enough time to cultivate step by step. He needs to go to a bigger world, experience more training, and come into contact with more opportunities. Only then will he be able to improve by leaps and bounds." Xiao Zhen naturally knew what Xiao Yan's goal was. Hearing this, she felt a little sad. "You can come with him." These words were on the tip of Lin Feng's tongue, but he swallowed them back down and didn't say them out loud. His performance of defeating Elder Li just now was extremely domineering. Even though this little girl was also shocked, her appearance was clearly shocked that there is this kind of expert here, and not there is actually this kind of expert in the world. His performance was unable to convince her, plus he guessed that she might have an extremely awesome background. The hope of making this little girl bow down together with Xiao Yan is very slim. Sure enough, Xiao Zhen reluctantly pulled Xiao Yan's hand. "I'm sorry, Xiao Yan Gij, Zhen can't accompany you. I'm sorry." If she could, she really wanted to keep following Xiao Yan Gij. But that way not only would she not be able to help him, she would instead harm him, even though it hasn't even been half a year and half of the 4 disciples are already in his hands, but that 1-year time limit is still pressing on Lin Feng's heart. The third one, the third one. Just where are you? If there are no clues, time is very easy to waste in aimlessly searching. Seeing Xiao Zhen reluctantly leave, Xiao Yan smiled. "Don't worry about me, Zhen. I won't be leaving for a while. What's more, I have a feeling that we will meet again very soon." Yan Mingyue's gaze hovered between this pair of children. A gentle smile blossomed on her lips. "Little friend Xiao Yan, I said before that I would teach you a divine ability of Taishu Temple as compensation for taking care of me these 3 years. I was originally going to teach you the Heaven Cage Sigil, but I'm afraid there is no need for it now." Hearing this, Xiao Yan was startled. Xiao Zhen was also slightly moved. The Heaven Cage Sigil is the signature spell of Taishu Temple. Among the numerous divine abilities of Taishu Temple, it is considered a rather basic spell, but almost every disciple of Taishu Temple will train in it. The reason is none other than this spell has been continuously improved by countless predecessors. It is already close to perfection and is very useful. The Heaven Cage Sigil, when used by Chi Disciple stage cultivators, it is a kind of power. When used by Primordial Spirit stage cultivators, it is another kind of earth-shattering power. Unlike many spells which have their own limits, when the cultivator's own cultivation level increases, they will gradually fall behind until they are eliminated. The Heaven Cage Sigil's potential is close to limitless. Even in fights between Primordial Spirit stage powerhouses, it is also a very useful spell. Hearing this, Lin Feng was first startled, then immediately reacted. The vigilance in his gaze towards Yan Mingyue became even thicker, but also even more concealed. Through Lin Feng's method of using the Taotai to repel the enemy, Yan Mingyue has clearly already guessed that the Heaven Cage Sigil she left in the ring was not only broken by Lin Feng, but also grasped by Lin Feng. The Heaven Cage Sigil is a secret spell of the Taishu Temple. It is not easily passed on to outsiders, because once it falls into the eyes of someone who knows what it is, the user will often wear the name of the Taishu Temple, very easily being used by others to cause trouble. But right now Yan Mingyue clearly has no intention of looking into it, facing a person of unknown origin like Lin Feng, yet unfathomable. As long as there is no core conflict, Yan Mingyue would rather be friends than enemies. She looked at Xiao Yan and said, "The spell I will pass on to you is called Red Lotus Break. It is a fire-type magical ability. The weakness is that it is not easy to practice. There is even a certain risk when practicing, but its power is absolutely satisfying." Yan Mingyue and Xiao Yan have been together day and night for 3 years. She can naturally see that Xiao Yan is most suited to practice fire-type Dao techniques. Similar to the Heaven Cage Sigil, Red Lotus Break can also be considered to have a reputation. It is a very famous fire-type spell of the Taishu Temple, famous for being able to explode with power higher than the cultivator's current level. Even though this spell has its own flaws, it is most suitable for fighting above one's level, using the small to defeat the large. For the current Xiao Yan, it is even more attractive than the Heaven Cage Sigil. Xiao Yan happily nodded his head. Yan Mingyue glanced at Lin Feng and continued saying, "The ingredients for the soul-stabilizing pill, other than the main ingredient spirit calming grass provided by fellow Taoist Lin, I still need a few supplementary ingredients. These supplementary ingredients are all very common. Wuzhou City has them. I'll have to trouble Xiao Yan to help me gather them." Xiao Yan straightforwardly agreed. Yan Mingyue immediately started to teach him the Red Lotus Break ability, not avoiding Lin Feng and Xiao Zhen who were at the side. Yan Mingyue didn't avoid it, but Xiao Zhen would not know the rules, very consciously greeting Xiao Yan. "Big brother Xiao Yan, I'm going back to the mansion first. With such a big commotion here, the people in the mansion will all be alarmed. I'll go back and stabilize them. You study in peace." Finishing speaking, he turned around and left. Lin Feng secretly curled his lips, also bringing the little guy away. Regardless of whether Xiao Yan takes the initiative to hand it over later or not, right now he has to put on the attitude of a disdainful expert. Spirit calming grass? Soul stabilizing pill? It all belongs to that damn woman. I hate it, I hate it. If I eat it, I'll immediately recover at least 50% of my strength, then I'll go and swallow a few golden elixir period cultivators and very quickly recover my former strength. I hate it. The roar of the Taotai came from within the ring, full of unwillingness. Taishu Temple. That damn woman is from Taishu Temple. You're also from Taishu Temple. Those who come from Taishu Temple are all not good people. You're hateful. That damn woman is even more hateful. I curse you people from Taishu Temple to not have a good ending. Just like the previous saintess of your temple, her Tao heart was broken, her cultivation was completely destroyed, she married someone else as a concubine, was bullied by a mortal woman, vomited blood and died, gave birth to a son who was orphaned. The father looked on indifferently, the official mother suppressed him in every way. The Taotai was scolding to its heart's content when it suddenly discovered that Lin Feng had appeared in front of it, staring fixedly at it through the light. Prison of the Heaven Cage Sigil. Lin Feng's gaze at this time was like a vicious wolf that had been starving for a lifetime and suddenly saw meat, causing even a foodie like the Taotai to tremble in fear. "If I didn't hear wrong, you're saying?" Lin Feng licked his lips, his eyes emitting a green light. You're saying that the former saintess was killed by someone, leaving behind a son who was a bastard son of a wealthy family, but was suppressed by his father and official mother, living an extremely miserable life? The Taotai subconsciously nodded. Lin Feng wildly shouted in his heart. Happiness came too suddenly, catching people unprepared. No matter how I look at it, this guy is the template of a main character, the destined one. Could it be that the third one is about to come? Chapter 26. Within the space of the ring, Lin Feng's divine sense also condensed into an illusory figure, facing the remnant soul of the Taotai in the light prison. Lin Feng stared at the Taotai and asked, "If I didn't hear wrong just now, you're saying that the former saintess of Taishu Temple was killed by someone, leaving behind a son, a bastard son of a rich family, but was suppressed by his father and first mother, living extremely miserably?" The Taotai subconsciously nodded, but immediately reacted, shouting in dissatisfaction, "Why should I tell you?" Lin Feng smiled brilliantly. With a thought, the light prison formed by the heaven cage sigil instantly shrunk, firmly trapping the Tao. The bars formed by the light pillars pressed down on the Taoye's body. Dense mist rose from the surface of the Taoye's body, causing the Taotai to repeatedly scream in pain. The heaven cage sigil was not only a method to trap the enemy, it also possessed destructive power, especially against the soul. It was even sharper. "Why, it hurts. It hurts." The Taoye's facial features squeezed together in pain, the translucent soul distorted, turning into a small human figure, shrinking to avoid the pressure of the light prison. Seeing this, Lin Feng slightly stared blankly. The Taotai in front of him shockingly turned into a little girl who looked no more than 3 or 4 years old, with 2 goat horn braids, long and delicate like a jade peck, snow white and cute. This Taoye's human form was actually a little lowly. Just in terms of cuteness, it could challenge Xiao Budian, that super cute Shota. Only this lowly was really fierce. Even though her appearance was cute, her expression was very rude and overbearing. Seeing Lin Feng blankly staring at her, she angrily snorted, "What are you looking at my age? This is what I look like in human form, don't be so surprised." The Taotai was not a vicious beast famous for changing its form. Its human form would generally not be faked. This Taotai was actually a female Taotai cub. Lin Feng came back to his senses, nodding. "No wonder your words and actions are so childish, so you're still a wimpy brat." The little Taotai immediately exploded, stomping her feet and scolding. "Who are you calling a wimpy brat?" Lin Feng looked at her with a smile. "If you really think that you are an adult, then please be rational and mature. At the very least, figure out your current situation." He nodded at the little Taotai, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. "For example, find out who exactly has the final say here?" The little Taotai looked at the light prison that was right in front of her, that was still slowly shrinking and pressing towards her. The little guy barely managed to calm down, only her mouth was still muttering, "If I didn't take a vicious hit from that old guy from the Blaze Sword sect before, how could this kind of heaven cage sigil set up by mana possibly trap me? I'd eat it clean in one mouthful." Lin Feng's face was brimming with a warm smile like the spring sun. "Do you mean to remind me to take advantage of your weakest moment to completely kill you?" The little Taoye's body trembled, and it hurriedly shook its head, squeezing out a smile on its face. "Of course not, of course not." Lin Feng nodded his head. "But I feel that I should completely kill you right now." He cast a sidelong glance at the young Taotai, who looked like a little lowly, and counted with his fingers. "First of all, the lad whose magic power was completely devoured by you 3 years ago is now my disciple. You have tricked him so badly. As his master, shouldn't I help my disciple take revenge? Then, that Yen Mingyue that you hate to the bone, even though we can't be considered friends, at least our relationship is not bad. Finally, and also the most important point, if I keep you around, once you recover your strength, you will definitely be disadvantageous to me." The little Taoye's expression became more and more ugly, its gaze already carrying clear fear. Lin Feng stared at her. "I have so many reasons to completely kill you. Tell me, why should I let you go?" The little Taotai swallowed its saliva, opening a pair of big black eyes and looking pitifully at Lin Feng. This senior, if there is anything that I can do, please feel free to tell me. Lin Feng smiled and lightly said, that will depend on your performance. The little Taotai was helpless. It could only honestly answer Lin Feng's question. When Taishu Temple accepted disciples, they valued quality over quantity. The number of disciples was very few, and many of them would never leave the sect for their entire lives, only wholeheartedly cultivating in the sect and comprehending the great Tao. However, every time a disciple of Taishu Temple entered the world to cultivate, it would inevitably set off a huge wave. The most outstanding leader among the inner disciples would become the spokesperson of Taishu Temple in the world, walking around the world. This disciple was usually called a Tao walker by the outside world. If this person happened to be a female, she would often be called the saintess of Taishu Temple. At first, this title was just a joke by busybodies, but because of Taishu Temple's transcendent status as the #1 holy land and the outstanding strength of the female Tao walkers, it gradually became a publicly recognized title. The previous generation's saintess of Taishu Temple was called Meng Bingyun. She was extremely talented and was publicly recognized as the most outstanding disciple born in Taishu Temple in the past 1,000 years. The Tao technique that Meng Bingyun cultivated was called the Way of Supreme Wangqing. Together with the other Tao technique of Taishu Temple, the Way of Void Yin Yang, they were called the Tai and Suj scriptures. They were the strongest Tao technique recorded in Taishu Temple's Great Tao Essentials. This Tao technique paid particular attention to first obtaining emotions, then forgetting them, using the human path to seek the heavenly Tao. Cultivating to the highest level, turning emotionlessness into great love. Without a word, all living beings will listen. Without a body moving, heaven and earth will bow down. The most taboo was to be entangled, to be constantly hung up, to be tied down by emotions, to be trapped by emotions. But Meng Bingyun just had to meet a man who was entangled with her for her entire life, the Zhou dynasty's grand tutor, the Marquis of Xuanji, Zhu Hongwu. Because of Zhu Hongwu, Meng Bingyun experienced the tribulation of emotions. In the end, she was unable to resolve it and her Tao heart shattered, causing her shocking cultivation to disappear into thin air. It could be said that this was the most tragic outcome of cultivating the Way of Supreme Wangqing. The Zhou dynasty was a country even more prosperous than the Qin dynasty. Successive generations of monarchs worked hard to govern, the country's power flourished day by day. When the throne was passed down to the current monarch, Liang Pan, the country's power rapidly expanded. Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu, the monarch and minister, both advocated suppressing sects with religious backgrounds to develop in the Zhou dynasty. 20 years ago, they even joined forces with the Nine Heaven Sword Alliance and several other major powers to do a world-shaking thing, changing the power structure of the entire heaven primal world in one fell swoop. Destroying Buddhism. The Zhou dynasty joined forces with many other powers to encircle and annihilate one of the world's 3 great holy lands, the Great Thunder Temple. That battle was tragic to the extreme. Countless experts died in battle, and who knows how many primordial spirit-level great cultivators perished. But in the end, Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu succeeded. From then on, the Great Thunder Temple's name was removed from the world. Of the world's 3 great holy lands, only Taishu Temple and Mount Shu Sword Sect remained. Taishu Temple is a Taoist holy land, similarly opposing the Zhou dynasty. Because of her union with Zhu Hongwu, Meng Bingyun was even expelled from the Taishu Temple, and even almost had her sect cleaned out. If the story ended here, Meng Bingyun and Zhu Hongwu from then on relying on each other, it could barely be counted as a story that only envies Mandarin ducks and not immortals. But for Meng Bingyun, marrying into the house of the Marquis of Xuanji, the nightmare has only just begun. Because of the Tao she cultivates, when Meng Bingyun entered the world to train, she went deep into the secular world and became a courtesan who only sold her skills and not her body. Marrying into the house of the Marquis of Xuanji that places great importance on etiquette, no matter how glorious she was before marriage, she could only be a concubine. No Tao cultivation, no family status, The former holy maiden of the Taishu temple was actually bullied to death by the wife of the house of the marquis, who is only a normal person. When Lin Feng heard up to here, he also sighed endlessly, just like how a noble family is as deep as the ocean. For a powerful person like Zhu Hongwu, even if he falls in love, in front of power, it's also completely not worth mentioning. After sighing for a while, Lin Feng remembered his main goal. Then what about Meng Bingyun's son? The little Taotai shook her head. I only heard that Meng Bingyun and Zhu Hongwu had a son. His name seems to be called Zhu Yi? What a strange name. Same as Meng Bingyun, his situation is not very good. After Meng Bingyun died, it's probably even worse. But I'm not clear about the specific situation, and I don't know if he's dead or alive right now. Lin Feng frowned slightly. Looks like I have to hurry to the Great Show as soon as possible. Reinforcing the Heaven Cage sigil a bit more, Lin Feng's consciousness retreated from the ring. Even though he was itching to immediately head to the Great Show to find Zhu Yi, there are still problems in front of him that need to be resolved. For example, the fire essence that invaded Lin Feng's body before and was bitterly suppressed by him using his own mana. This time the lottery must be awesome. Lin Feng secretly prayed, his consciousness entering the lottery system. Chapter 27. The third time he tried the lottery, Lin Feng's first goal was a fire-type Dao technique. His second goal was a treasure that could resolve the remaining fire energy in his body. The fire energy that was devoured by the Taotai and then fed back out, a portion of it remained in Lin Feng's body, making his entire body feel hot and his insides feel like they were on fire. Even though he could resolve it by relying on his own mana, he would undoubtedly suffer for a while. Training in fire-type Dao techniques, not only can he resolve this fire energy, he can instead use this energy to raise his own cultivation level. Using the usual method, Lin Feng first looked at the items listed in the roulette system and the dice system. The dice system has a medicine called Crimson Pearl Sky Frost Pill. It can effectively heal injuries caused by fire-type mana. And the roulette system gave two fire-type Dao techniques at once. One Scorching Sun Battle Chi, the other the Remnant Art of Akala. Lin Feng pondered for a bit, first not mentioning whether or not he would definitely get the Crimson Pearl Sky Frost Pill. Even if he did, it would only solve his own injuries, it wouldn't solve the problem of him urgently needing a fire-type Dao technique to pass on to Xiao Yan. Let's go with the roulette system. Lin Feng made his decision with two goals to fight for. The chances of success are also much higher. In the two Dao techniques, the Scorching Sun Battle Chi is relatively low-end. It can cultivate the Scorching Sun Flame. The Scorching Sun Flame can only be considered average, but it is the foundation of one of the 7 great flames, the true Sun Flame. If a cultivator that cultivates the Scorching Sun Flame can obtain the secret of the rising sun, they can cultivate the true Sun Flame. If a cultivator that cultivates the true Sun Flame can learn the true Sun Flame method, they can cultivate the true Sun Flame of the 7 great flames. Even though it is very troublesome, but at least there is room for improvement. And the other Dao technique, the Art of Akala, is different. It can cultivate the fury of the unmoving Akala. Its power is second only to the 7 great flames. It is even above the true Sun Flame. Compared to the Scorching Sun Flame, it is who knows how many levels higher. The current system level originally can't get the Art of Akala, but because it is a remnant, only the first half, it randomly appeared. But when faced with these two Dao techniques, Lin Feng fell into a dilemma. Because according to the explanation, this Art of Akala is the secret technique of the Buddhist Holy Land Great Thunder Temple. Even in a holy land like the Great Thunder Temple, it was one of the top techniques. After the Great Thunder Temple was destroyed, it was almost lost. Previously it was too famous. Now, if he were to use it after cultivating it, he would be recognized at a glance. He was going to bring Xiao Yan and Xiao Budian to the capital of the Great Zhou Dynasty, Tianjing City. It was the Great Zhou Dynasty that took the lead to encircle and annihilate the Great Thunder Temple. If he and his group were to be exposed, would they be seen as remnants of the Buddhist sect and hunted down? This was no joke. To this day, the Great Zhou Dynasty still banned Buddhist activities within its borders and cruelly hunted down the monks who fled after the Great Thunder Temple was destroyed. It's still that sentence. For a true son of heaven like Xiao Yan, once he leaves the novice village of Wuzhou City, there will immediately be countless enemies crying and shouting, throwing themselves at him. He can't even hide. If he obtained the art of Akala and passed it on to Xiao Yan, once he fought within the borders of the great Zhou dynasty and revealed himself, Lin Feng and the others would immediately find it hard to take a single step. After thinking over and over again, Lin Feng still felt that he should target the ardent sun battle Qi. Even though the current level is a bit low, it wins in that there are no future troubles. For the time being, he felt a bit sorry for Xiao Yan. He could only wait for the future to make up for it and think of a way to get the art of the rising sun and the true sunfire technique. It wouldn't hold him back. The reason why he said to target the ardent sun battle Qi is because Lin Feng had a guess about the roulette system. The rotation of the roulette follows Lin Feng's thoughts. He wants it to rotate and it starts to rotate. This is different from a real physical roulette. For a real roulette, the amount of strength used by a person to rotate it will directly affect the rotation of the roulette. Does this virtual roulette system have a fixed pattern when it rotates? Lin Feng stared at the roulette. Based on his experience of drawing the spirit calming grass last time, the roulette rotated around 3.5 times. If the pattern is fixed, then the ardent sun battle Qi should be in the number 9 square. Then this time he should start from the number 18 or 1 square. Lin Feng chose 18 and thought in his heart, you have to get it. Even though the mysterious chest is good, he doesn't want it now. Who knows if the thing he needs the most will appear. When Lin Feng confirmed in his heart that he had started, the roulette quickly began to rotate. 1 circle, 2 circles, 3 circles. Lin Feng stared closely and thought in his heart, half a circle, half a circle, half a circle. Damn, stop. What made Lin Feng disappointed is that after the roulette rotated half a circle, it didn't stop at the number 9 square of the ardent sun battle Qi. Instead, it continued to move back 4 squares before swaying and stopping. The 13th square, the art of Akala. Lin Feng didn't need to look to know what it was, he had already observed it all before it was turned. Right now his face was full of a bitter smile. System, you're purposefully messing with me, aren't you? Lottery over. Following the mechanical sound of the system notification, Lin Feng smiled bitterly and exited from the lottery system. Lines of scripture clearly appeared in his mind. It is precisely the contents of the first half of the art of Akala. Is the art of Akala good? Just from the perspective of the level of the Tao technique, of course it's good. If it's the complete version, it's practically on the same level as the 9 Heavens Thunder technique. Lin Feng shook his head. Never mind, in any case it's a pretty good Tao technique, it's just that I don't know how to get the second half. He made up his mind, after leaving Wuzhou City, he must keep a close eye on Xiao Yan. If something really happens, then he might as well be ruthless and not let the news leak. Lin Feng doesn't want to be wanted and hunted as soon as he enters Great Zhou. Lin Feng started to circulate his mana according to the essence of the art of Akala, trying to guide the fire element energy in his body. Just moving, Lin Feng suddenly felt something was wrong. The pure lightning mana he obtained from the 9 Heavens Thunder technique was actually rapidly transforming in his acupuncture points, turning into raging flames. The 7 acupuncture points that have already been opened are all filled with pure blazing fire element mana. Lin Feng's gaze flashed. This feeling is practically like I was cultivating the art of Akala from the beginning and advanced to Qi Disciple level 7. While thinking, Lin Feng activated the art of Akala, using the blazing fire element mana in his acupuncture points to guide the fire element energy that invaded his body before. This fire element energy has always been suppressed by Lin Feng's lightning element mana. Even though it's unable to overturn the heavens, it has always been a tit for tat, stubbornly resisting to the end without any intention of yielding. But now that it has come into contact with the fire element mana cultivated from the art of Akala, it is instantly like a wanderer far away from his hometown seeing his family, cheering and jumping as it merged into it. In an instant, the fire element mana in Lin Feng's body exploded even more, actually madly rushing towards the 8th acupuncture point that Lin Feng hasn't opened yet. Boom! Amidst the explosion, it was like a bomb. The violent fire element mana directly charged through the 8th acupuncture point, circling and flying within. Lin Feng was pleasantly surprised. He actually managed to charge to Qi Disciple level 8 by accident like this. What made him even more pleasantly surprised is that with a thought, the fire element mana that had originally turned into a prairie fire instantly gave off a zzz electric sound, once again transforming into lightning element mana. The lightning element mana in the 8th acupuncture point also didn't feel the slightest bit of discomfort, as if Lin Feng originally used the lightning element mana to charge through the 8th acupuncture point, advancing from Qi Disciple level 7 to Qi Disciple level 8. Lin Feng was extremely excited. Just like how other people can't see through my cultivation level, this can also count as a kind of hidden benefit of the system, right? I can freely change the foundation of my own Dao technique. No matter what Dao technique I learn, the level of my mana can immediately rise to the level I already have. In the cultivation world, there is no lack of cultivators who train multiple Dao techniques at once, but those are often great cultivators with very high levels. In order to break through bottlenecks, they train in other Dao techniques, hoping to be able to comprehend by analogy and gain the effect of using other mountain stones to attack jade. And for cultivators with lower levels, they don't even have enough time to train in one Dao technique. If they train in multiple Dao techniques at once, the final result is that they won't be able to comprehend the true mysteries within any one of them. What's more, different Dao techniques train in different Dao techniques. Many of them are incompatible, even restraining each other. Not only will there be no benefits after training, it will instead affect one's own cultivation. Even primordial spirit level powerhouses all have their own fundamental Dao technique. It is the foundation of all cultivation. Even if they train in other Dao techniques, they only have a supplementary effect. But right now, no matter how many Dao techniques Lin Feng trains in, he can freely switch between them. This has many benefits for his cultivation. First, not talking about hiding his strength, hiding his identity, making the opponent unable to figure out his background, just in terms of cultivation speed, Lin Feng has a huge advantage. For example, today, relying on the 9 Heavens Thunder technique, Lin Feng originally wouldn't have been able to advance to Qi Disciple level 8 so quickly, but because of special reasons this time his body has accumulated a lot of fire element energy, so relying on the fire Dao technique art of Akala, he digested this external spiritual energy and charged to Qi Disciple level 8 in one go. Feeling the abundant mana around his body, Lin Feng was extremely happy. Even the feeling of confusion from drawing the art of Akala has faded a lot. He returned to where Xiao Yan and Yan Mingyue are. Yan Mingyue has already finished teaching the Red Lotus Burst. Xiao Yan is currently lowering his head to comprehend it by himself. Yan Mingyue saw Lin Feng walk over. A light flashed in her eyes. Fellow Taoist Lin seems to have good news. Chapter 28. In the wind, Yan Mingyue's blue robe fluttered. She was like an immortal descending to the mortal world. She laughed softly. Friend Lin seems to have some good news? Lin Feng smiled faintly. He glanced at Xiao Yan and said nonchalantly, having such a good disciple is naturally a good thing. Yan Mingyue smiled faintly and didn't say anything else. Xiao Yan, who was originally immersed in learning the Red Lotus break, also came back to his senses. He looked at Lin Feng with a gaze full of passion. Lin Feng nodded and his smile slowly disappeared. He said seriously, although in these 3 years, your cultivation hasn't improved at all, you haven't given up. Instead, you've been persisting in cultivating. This is very good, very rare. To be able to be the chosen one, there must be something special about him. Xiao Yan's will reaching 9 was not just for show. The so-called will was the will of one's heart. There were trillions of living beings in the heaven primal world. There were actually many geniuses with outstanding aptitude and comprehension, but only a small number of them could truly accomplish something. What would determine what realm they could reach in the future and how much they could display their outstanding talent would depend on their individual willpower. Those with a strong will naturally go further than those with the same talent. Lin Feng looked at Xiao Yan and said slowly, it's because you've been persisting that your foundation is more solid than others. You've accumulated enough and in the future, there will be fewer bottlenecks. It may seem like you've wasted 3 years, but in the future, you'll find that you can easily make up for these 3 years. Xiao Yan was a little surprised. He really didn't know what benefits these 3 nightmarish years could bring him. Then when will you teach me Dao techniques? Xiao Yan, who was rolling his eyes, focused on the most important thing. Yan Mingyue suddenly interrupted. Friend Lin, I see that your little disciple seems to be cultivating lightning Dao techniques. When Xiao Yan heard this, he was stunned. Previously, when he was learning the Red Lotus Break, Yan Mingyue had told him that he was more suitable to cultivate in fire elemental Dao techniques. If his master only knew lightning elemental Dao techniques, no matter how profound and powerful her Dao techniques were, it would be a pity for him. Lin Feng smiled faintly. This little fellow is suitable to cultivate the Dao art of lightning, so I taught him the Dao art of lightning. As a teacher, I have to teach in accordance with his aptitude. The meaning behind his words was that he knew more than one Dao art, so he naturally had a suitable fire Dao art to pass down to Xiao Yan. Hearing this, Xiao Yan immediately felt relieved. Yan Mingyue smiled and nodded, not saying anything else. She re-evaluated Lin Feng's strength in her heart. Most itinerant cultivators only stepped onto the path of cultivation after obtaining the legacy of an ancient great cultivator by chance. Being able to obtain a Taoist art was already a great stroke of luck. If Lin Feng had mastered different Taoist arts, and they were all comparatively profound Taoist arts, then Lin Feng's strength couldn't be measured by the standard of an ordinary itinerant cultivator at all. Yan Mingyue even suspected that Lin Feng was a cultivator that had lived in seclusion for many years from some great power and had suddenly come into the world. At this moment, Xiao Yan stole a glance at Tiny, and he thought of something, instantly frowning. Lin Feng looked at his expression and knew what he was thinking in his heart, and he couldn't help but snigger in his heart. On his face, he said to Tiny, "From today onwards, you're the eldest disciple under Master, and you'll temporarily take the position of the sect Master's disciple. In the future, when Master accepts new disciples, as the eldest senior brother, you have to set an example for them." Xiao Yan was stunned, and his eyes glanced towards Tiny, who was looking at him with a grin. Lin Feng ignored Xiao Yan's small movements and patted Tiny's head, saying without saying anything, "This is your little junior brother, Shi Tianhao. As the eldest senior brother, take care of him in the future." Xiao Yan hurriedly nodded. His little head was like a chick pecking rice. He was overjoyed in his heart. Just now, he thought that he had to call this little fellow senior brother, and he felt awkward. He didn't expect that he was actually the sect master's disciple. In the future, when Lin Feng accepts more disciples, they would have to call him eldest senior brother. Xiao Yan was elated in his heart. Tiny walked forward, raised his young and tender little face, and saluted in a serious manner. Shi Tianhao greets eldest senior brother. He was obviously a little fellow, but he had to pretend to be old and experienced. No matter how one looked at him, he was cute. Xiao Yan was also amused by him. "Don't worry, if you have any problems in the future, look for me. Your senior brother will take care of you." At this point, Xiao Yan suddenly remembered that this seemingly cute little fellow in front of him was a solid Qi disciple level 4 cultivator. A Qi disciple level 4 cultivator who wasn't even 4 years old. Thinking of this, Xiao Yan's forehead suddenly became covered in sweat. It seemed that his current cultivation level was only at Qi disciple level 1, and he was far inferior to this little junior brother. It was uncertain who would take care of who between the two of them. Xiao Yan raised his eyes to look at Lin Feng, but he saw that Lin Feng was also staring at him. His gaze was both encouraging and testing. "I will definitely double my efforts in cultivation. Please don't worry, Master." Xiao Yan's heart suddenly trembled, and his entire person became calm as he said seriously, "What a joke, as the eldest senior brother, if his cultivation level wasn't as high as the youngest junior brother, how could that be?" Lin Feng nodded with satisfaction. "I told you to take care of your junior brother, and it wasn't just for show. Ordinary people know that as an elder brother, you have to protect your younger sisters-in-law. In the future, when your junior brothers and sisters are in trouble, as the eldest senior brother, you have to stand up for them. If you were beaten by someone's junior, then beat them back yourself. Don't be like a child who hasn't grown up, crying to your master that I don't have such a useless disciple. If you beat up the little one and provoke the old one, don't be afraid. At that time, your master will stand up for you. Xiao Yan's blood was boiling. Don't worry, master, even if the old one is provoked, you don't have to do anything. I will concentrate on cultivation, and then go back to find him. At that time, the old and the little one will fight together. At the side, Tiny Tot also shouted, yes, master, I will also help the eldest senior brother. Lin Feng couldn't help but laugh, poking his little head. You just want to see the world in chaos. He turned his head towards Xiao Yan and said, go back and prepare. Arrange the matters at home, we will leave Wuzhou in 3 days. In these 3 days, you can also come to this lakeside at any time. At that time, your master will teach you Taoist techniques. Lin Feng glanced at Yan Mingyue. Also gather the other medicinal ingredients that this fellow cultivator Yan needs to refine the fixed soul pill. Xiao Yan nodded his head in agreement. Yan Mingyue at the side smiled and said, thank you for your trouble, Xiao Yan, I will also wait by this lakeside for these 3 days. Xiao Yan has already become Lin Feng's disciple, so she naturally can't follow Xiao Yan and act together. After Xiao Yan left, Lin Feng and Yan Mingyue stood facing each other, silent for a moment. Tiny Tot also didn't say anything, quietly staying by Lin Feng's side. Even though he is playful, he is far more precocious than children of the same age. He can feel that the atmosphere between his master and that beautiful big sister is strange. After a long silence, Lin Feng spoke first. I wonder what fellow Yan plans to do in the future? He has already found out from the little Tao Tai that this green-clothed beauty in front of him is not an ordinary disciple of Taishu Temple, but the new Taoist walker after Meng Bingyun, also the new generation holy maiden of Taishu Temple that the outside world is used to calling. 10 years ago, after she and Long Yi were both injured, Yan Mingyue had no choice but to stay in the ring to recuperate. For the outside world, Yan Mingyue is in a missing state where her life or death is unknown. Without a doubt, the unknown whereabouts of the Holy Maiden of Taishu Temple is an earthquake to the entire heaven primal world. The previous 2 Taoist walkers did not meet a good end. For Taishu Temple, their reputation also took a considerable hit. As compensation and response, it can be assumed that Taishu Temple will very quickly push out a new Taoist walker. Taishu Temple will also focus on nurturing this new person and will even bestow him or her with some power and resources that the predecessors never had. At this time, Yan Mingyue, this past popular holy maiden, is in an awkward situation. When she returns to the sect, what awaits her may not be just congratulations. With Yan Mingyue's intelligence, how could she not think of all these things? But she still maintained a calm and collected appearance, smiling indifferently. May I ask fellow Lin to give me some pointers? Where did I meet Long Yi before? After I stabilize my soul, I'll go find her first. Lin Feng was slightly stunned. You too have such great hatred? Did she steal your man? Yan Mingyue faintly smiled, saying honestly, she has something in her hands. No matter if it's for the sect or myself, we have to find a way to get it back. Chapter 29. She has something in her hands, no matter if it's the sect or me personally, we have to try to get it back. Yan Mingyue's tone was calm, but Lin Feng knows that the thing in Long Ye's hands is definitely not ordinary. He now also knows why Yan Mingyue isn't worried about her situation after returning to the sect, and understands why Yan Mingyue is in a hurry to find Long Yi. If she can successfully take back the thing from Long Yi, when she returns to the sect in the future, no one will dare to slight her. Understanding this, Lin Feng answered crisply, I'm also not sure where that Long Yi is right now. I only encountered this demon a month ago in the continuous mountain range northeast of Wuzhou. Lin Feng said in his heart, let this pair of old enemies continue fighting. With Yan Mingyue making a move, no matter how good that female demon's memory is, she won't remember to find trouble with him, right? He rubbed the little guy's head and said, that was a small village deep within the mountains. This demon's body was attached to an old peach tree, and it suddenly awakened, endangering the lives of the villagers. I just happened to pass by, broke her evil technique, and also saved this little fellow. Lin Feng asked Yan Mingyue, what is this Long Ye's background? I think she's not an ordinary tree demon. Yen Mingyue lightly sighed. Fellow Taoist is correct, that peach tree is only a place that Long Yi found to rest after being heavily injured. Her original body was killed by me 10 years ago, but it's a spiritual plant of heaven and earth, the jade tree of Longhuan. Lin Feng's heart thumped. All living things have spirits, plants can also cultivate to become spirits, but the difficulty is far more difficult than normal beast-type demons. It's just that once a plant demon cultivates to a certain level, whether it's their lifespan or mana, they'll both be extremely powerful. The cultivation potential of a plant demon is directly linked to its species. Among them the top are the 4 great spiritual plants of heaven and earth. They are respectively the Wutong Divine Tree, Shiluo Iron Tree, Ginseng Fruit Tree, as well as the Jade Tree of Longhuan. Lin Feng didn't think that Long Yi, who had been thinking about him, was actually a Longhuan Jade Tree spirit. This kind of innate talent, if placed in the human race, it would absolutely be at Xiao Budian's level. No wonder it could become Yen Mingyue's mortal enemy. Being targeted by such a great demon, Lin Feng felt great pressure, but he didn't show it on his face. He nodded and said, "It's no wonder that she could still cause trouble and do evil even after losing her body and only having her divine soul left. I didn't know her background at that time, otherwise I would have gotten rid of her." Yen Mingyue nodded. Long Yi is the direct disciple of the demon race's great sage, Tian Mei. She cultivates the demon race's supreme Tao technique, the heavenly demon scripture. I've fought with her many times before, but we were all evenly matched. If we were to fight to the death, it would be the result of mutual destruction. Speaking up to here, Yen Mingyue faintly smiled. I still have to thank fellow Lin. Long Yi was heavily injured by fellow Lin and her 10 years of recovery was practically wasted. But I received the help of the spirit calming grass and have hopes of recovering a step further. Under these circumstances, I have a bit more chance of winning if I go find her. Lin Feng replied indifferently, an unintentional action, I don't dare to take credit for it. But in his heart he thought, that's right, hurry up and take care of her. In the next 3 days, Lin Feng silently stayed by the lake with Xiao Budian and Yen Mingyue. Even though the commotion of the great battle with the Blaze Sword sect before was very big, but it looks like Xiao Zhen has already used some unknown method to convince the Xiao family. Not only did the Xiao family maintain silence from top to bottom, the old clan leader even personally went to the city leader's mansion and sat for a full half a day. After the old clan leader went to visit, the city leader came forward and controlled the entire Wuzhou situation. All of the restless powers all ceased their banners and ceased their drums. Peace once again returned to Wuzhou. No one came to the lakeside to spy. The area around the small lake to the north of the city became a restricted area during this period of time. Xiao Zhe did not expose Xiao Yan. The black-clothed youth was still the same as usual these few days. No one realized that the change in the small lake had something to do with him, and even more no one would have thought that this youth's fate had already undergone an earth-shattering change. These 3 days Xiao Yan was so busy that his feet didn't even touch the ground. Searching for medicinal ingredients, packing up his luggage, and also having to go to the lakeside to learn Tao techniques from Lin Feng. He already can't wait to become stronger. Lin Feng also did not avoid Yen Mingyue, directly passing on the art of Akala to Xiao Yan. As soon as he started using the art of Akala, Xiao Yan realized that this Tao technique was out of the ordinary, far surpassing the Xiao family's Tao technique that he practiced. His mind was greatly roused and he threw himself into training with all his heart and soul. Yen Mingyue's gaze towards Lin Feng was even more probing. With her knowledge, she could see the origins of the art of Akala at a glance, but in her heart she felt more and more unable to see through Lin Feng. He's clearly dressed as a Taoist. Why does he have the secret Tao technique of the Great Thunder Monastery? Is it that he himself was a monk that escaped from the Great Thunder Monastery back then? Now he's dressed as a Taoist to deceive people? Or did he accidentally obtain the Tao technique that was passed down after the destruction of the Great Thunder Monastery? Lin Feng turned a blind eye to Yen Mingyue's probing gaze. Right now he was looking at his 2 disciples eating pills like they were eating candy, his heart aching. You 2 prodigal things, slow down, slow down. If you keep eating like this, master will very quickly go bankrupt. both for the sake of his two disciples raising their level as fast as possible and also for the sake of himself raising his strength as fast as possible. Lin Feng completely exchanged the 500 exchange points rewarded by the system after taking Xiao Yan as his disciple into all kinds of pills that can help with cultivation. In the end, the two little brats really weren't polite, opening their cheeks and wildly eating to the point that Lin Feng's heart ached. But eating like this naturally has results. The foundation that Xiao Yan bitterly laid down for 3 years. At this moment the accumulated strength exploded, showing its power. The art of Akala combined with a sea of pills, without Yan Mingyue and the Taotai restraining him, on the first day of cultivation Xiao Yan actually directly broke through his acupuncture point, advancing to the second level of Qi disciple. In 3 days' time Xiao Yan already charged to the peak of the second level of Qi disciple. As long as he breaks through the barrier of the third acupuncture point he'll be at the third level of Qi disciple. After the annulment of the marriage, this brat's tyrannical aura was like the yellow river bursting its banks, surging and roaring, unable to be stopped. This kind of cultivation speed made Lin Feng speechless as he gazed at the sky. Instructor, I also want to annul the marriage. It wasn't just him. Yan Mingyue and the little guy were also shocked by Xiao Yan's instantaneous improvement speed. Not sure if it was because she felt Xiao Yan's surging tyrannical aura, Yan Mingyue lightly sighed. Fellow Taoist Lin has good eyesight. Mingyue is even a bit regretful. Lin Feng let out a long laugh. Fellow Taoist Yan flatters me. He looked at Xiao Yan and said, go say goodbye to your little friend, we're about to leave. Xiao Yan nodded his head, walking in front of Xiao Zhen'er who was at the side, the little girl's gaze filled with strong reluctance and longing. Xiao Zhen'er didn't say a word, reaching out a white and tender little hand as usual, seriously helping Xiao Yan straighten out his slightly wrinkled clothes. Looking at Zhen'er who was helping him straighten out his clothes like a little wife, Xiao Yan was a bit startled, his breathing gradually quickened, and a touch of passion appeared in his eyes. Xiao Zhen'er was originally wrapped in sorrow of separation. She raised her head and noticed Xiao Yan's gaze, and her face couldn't help but blush. What are you looking at? Xiao Yan woke up and looked at the gentle and elegant person in front of him. The young man's expression was extremely solemn at this moment. I will definitely come back to see you. Xiao Zhen'er's eyes were covered with a faint layer of mist. She smiled and said, I will wait for brother Xiao Yan to come back and take back the glory that belongs to you. Lin Feng secretly sighed at the side, riding on a bamboo horse, playing with green plums around the bed. Childhood sweethearts, the purest kind of feeling. Such pure and beautiful feeling, anyone would feel happy seeing it. He glanced at Yan Mingyue next to him. Fellow Taoist Yan, let's say goodbye here. I wish you a smooth journey. Yan Mingyue has already taken the soul-stabilizing pill at this time. Her entire person is standing on the ground. Her aura is condensed, looking no different from a real person. A complicated light flashed past those eyes that were like moonlight. Yan Mingyue smiled peacefully. Fellow Taoist Lin, also take care. Lin Feng nodded his head, bringing Xiao Yan and Xiao Buddy in on their way, facing the warm morning sun and walking out of Wuzhou City. Looking at the two disciples behind him, Lin Feng was also a bit high-spirited. Zhu Yi, wait for Master, Master's coming. Tens of millions of miles away from Wuzhou, a group of red-clothed people gathered together, their faces full of bad luck. Bam! A red-clothed youth was sent flying with a slap. No one felt sympathy for him. Instead they all looked at him being hit with a face full of hatred. Zhang Nan had a bitter face and didn't dare to speak, because the person who hit him was the golden elixir period cultivator elderly. At this time the red-haired old man finally let out a sigh of relief, but the injuries on his body were extremely heavy. Just moving a bit like this he was already panting heavily. He stared at Zhang Nan and said angrily, the reason I hit you is not because you recommended that talented little bastard, but because you didn't figure out the other party's background. Do you understand? A foundation establishment stage cultivator at the side hesitated for a moment before asking, Martial uncle, do we still? A trace of fear floated into Elder Li's eyes, but it was very quickly covered up by anger. Of course we can't just let it go like this, otherwise how will our Blaze Sword sect have a foothold? This enmity must be avenged. What enmity does your sect have to avenge? Why don't you tell me? The Nine Heaven Sword Alliance is of the same breadth and branch. I don't mind helping out a little." A faint laugh rang out in the air. The expressions of all the Blaze Sword sect cultivators changed greatly. The other party was already very close and they actually didn't sense it at all. Elderly suddenly turned his head. What appeared in his line of sight was a youth dressed in clothes as white as snow, wearing a green bamboo hat on his head, currently smiling leisurely and contentedly. But that undisguised mana fluctuation all over his body told everyone present that this is a golden elixir period cultivator. The youth's expression was natural. Not mentioning that Elderly is currently heavily injured, even if the old man was at his peak condition he would still not care. Because his sword is even stronger. The most eye-catching part of him is the long sword at his waist. On the sword scabbard is carved a simple and heavy engraving of mountains and rivers. That is the symbol of the holy land of the Way of the Sword, the Mount Shu Sword sect. Chapter 30. The territory of the Heaven Primal World is vast and the land is vast. Lin Feng exhausted all methods and still spent over 3 months of time, experiencing a long and arduous journey before finally arriving at the capital of the great Zhou dynasty, Tianjing. At this moment Lin Feng deeply felt that his cultivation level is really too low. All of his precious time was wasted on the road. In this world, for cultivators with high cultivation, traveling 1,000 miles in a breath is completely a piece of cake. Of course, when facing his 2 disciples he would definitely have another explanation, glorifying it by saying that it is to let the 2 of them have more experience. Lin Feng did not waste these 3 months either. Other than rushing on the road, he was also seriously training. After exchanging blows with the Blaze Sword sect's Elderly, Lin Feng had a deep sense of danger. For the current him, a golden elixir period cultivator is a completely Leviathan-like existence. Even a plucked leg hair is thicker than his waist. Last time he used the Tao Tai to successfully repel Elderly and then successfully act cool. But that was completely a trick. Only when the time, place and people were all on his side could he succeed. But after that attack from Elderly the Tao Tai's vitality was greatly injured. Using the little lowly's own words, it is even more serious than my injuries 3 years ago. Now wanting to use the little Tao Tai to block the attack of a golden elixir period cultivator is completely a dream. Without the little Tao Tai, don't mention a golden elixir period cultivator, even a foundation establishment stage cultivator is enough to give Lin Feng a hard time. If a sneak attack fails, then he has no chance of winning in a head-on fight. So right now, besides traveling, Lin Feng uses all of his other time to train. In order to quickly raise his cultivation level, he endured the pain and absorbed a portion of the lightning energy in the Heaven Thunder Moon Jade. Right now there isn't much energy left in the Heaven Thunder Moon Jade. If it is used to support the Northern Aurora Sword to release the Northern Aurora Divine Light, it is only enough for 2 uses. However, hard work always pays off. On the way, Lin Feng advanced to Qi Disciple level 9. When the 3 of them finally arrived at Tianjing City, the capital of the Zhou dynasty, Lin Feng advanced a step further. He opened the 10th acupoint of the 12 floors and successfully advanced to Qi Disciple level 10. As for his own cultivation speed, Lin Feng was actually quite satisfied. Although the novice gift pack allowed him to directly jump to the 4th level of Qi Disciple, reaching the 10th level of Qi Disciple in a mere half a year was still shocking in the entire Great Heaven Primal world. However, facing his 2 monstrous disciples, Lin Feng was still under a lot of pressure. There was no need to mention the little guy. From the 4th level of Qi Disciple to the 7th level, the little guy was still a month away from turning 4 years old. Reaching the 7th level of Qi refinement at the age of 4 was enough to make countless cultivators throughout the ages feel ashamed to death. And Xiao Yan was really going to soar into the sky in one go. Before he had once cultivated to the great circle of Qi Disciple level 12, now that he is training from the beginning, he has a somewhat familiar feeling. Just like what Lin Feng said, if the foundation is solid enough, then there will be fewer bottlenecks when you start. Checkpoints that other people fear like tigers, Xiao Yan is walking on flat ground. When they arrived at Tianjing City, Xiao Yan had already reached the 6th level of Qi disciple level. His terrifying cultivation speed was not inferior to the little guy in the slightest. The current Xiao Yan was in high spirits and full of vigor, no longer had the gloomy and cold aura from before. The only thing that made the black-clothed youth vexed was that the task of being a nanny for the little guy fell onto his head. Lin Feng, on the other hand, was happy to be idle. Entering Tianjing City, Lin Feng didn't have the time to appreciate the bustling scene within, heading straight for his destination, the house of the Marquis of Xuanji. The house of the Marquis of Xuanji is situated in the southeast of Tianjing City. It takes up an area of 100 acres and has an open terrain. At the main entrance is a pair of red lacquered stone chelins that are as tall as 3 people. The vermilion red main door has an imposing manner. At the entrance of the house of the Marquis stood a row of energetic and vigorous servants, completely unlike the servants of other families who only think about slacking off while standing guard. These servants also don't communicate with each other, all of their gazes sharply staring at the passers-by at the entrance of the house of the Marquis. What made Lin Feng frown even more is that these servants are actually all cultivators who have already reached a higher level. The lowest level of cultivation is at the 6th level of Qi disciple level. Cultivators are actually guarding the door for people here, and they don't have the slightest bit of shame. Instead, their work attitude is extremely serious, clearly feeling that this is a job that does not disgrace them at all. The might and status of the Zhou dynasty's Grand Preceptor, the Marquis of Xuanji Zhu Hongwu, is displayed to the fullest in these details. In the rumors, Zhu Hongwu himself is a great cultivator with an extremely high level, running amok under the heavens. Back then, when they surrounded and suppressed the Great Thunder Temple, he even took the lead and was the main force in destroying Buddhism. Seeing you today, looks like the rumors aren't false. Lin Feng's brows tightly furrowed. This way, it will be even more difficult for him to take Zhu Yi in as a disciple. He doesn't even know Zhu Yi's exact location. The house of the Marquis is not easy to enter, you can't even see the person, how can you talk about taking him in as a disciple? First settling Xiao Yan and Xiao Budiyan down, then Lin Feng wandered around the vicinity of the house of the Marquis of Xuanji by himself. There's no use in being anxious, Lin Feng might as well relax his state of mind. Near the house of the Marquis of Xuanji, he found a tea house to sit down and asked for a pot of tea. Looking at the house of the Marquis in the distance, he carefully thought about countermeasures in his heart. The waiter put down the teapot, his eyes rolling around on Lin Feng's spotless feather robe and star crown, revealing a smiling face. If we're talking about outstanding people, everyone often praises this as the descending of the star of literary music and that as the descending of the star of martial music. But if you ask me, they can't even compare to the old Marquis of Xuanji. Not only does the Marquis of Xuanji have a grand title of nobility, he also holds an extremely high position, holding the position of Grand Secretary of the Cabinet, Grand Tutor of the Crown Prince. Skilled in both the pen and the sword, conquering all 4 directions, beheading generals and seizing flags as if strolling in a courtyard. The waiter's saliva flew everywhere. After establishing illustrious military achievements at the age of 22, he then abandoned martial arts to learn the pen, obtaining 1st place in the imperial examinations, 3rd place in high school. This kind of person is the real one. Towards the waiter's thumbs up in front of his eyes, Lin Feng faintly smiled, listening to his idle chatter, his gaze still staring at the house of the Marquis of Xuanji. Discovered target, suitable to become the host's direct disciple. Lin Feng was currently drinking tea when he heard the sudden notification sound. His tea almost sprayed out onto the waiter's face. Putting down the teacup, Lin Feng scanned the pedestrians on the street, his gaze finally locking onto an azure-clothed youth. The system notification sound also accurately and unmistakably told him that this is the target person. Carefully sizing him up, he saw that the azure-clothed youth is around 15 or 16 years old, with delicate features and a slightly thin body. Looking at him, he completely looks like a scholar without the strength to truss a chicken, but between his brows a sense of righteousness faintly seeped out. His gaze was as gentle as jade, but it had a sense of righteousness, making evil little ghosts not dare to offend him lightly. The system's voice sounded next to Lin Feng's ears. Talent system has finished organizing. Target number 4's information is as follows. Bone root 7. Comprehension -9. Will -8. Fortune -10. Conclusion. Target's talent is extremely high, recommended to take him in as a disciple and carefully guide him. He will definitely become a pillar of the sect. Lin Feng didn't see anything else. His eyes stared straight at the blood-red number 10 behind the fortune. After Xiao Budian, he finally saw a second person who has a full attribute. Fortune is the luck of the heavens. Blessings, in other words, is luck. Fortune of 10, what does it mean? It means that if he picks up trash it will be an ancient godly weapon. If he picks up old books there will be peerless secret manuals hidden in them. If he meets a powerful and swift and fierce enemy, he doesn't need to worry, that's the transport captain that will give him treasures and experience. Fortune of 10, even if this guy finds a tree to pee behind, he can step on an immortal grass. Lin Feng let out a long sigh in his heart. It can't be wrong, it's him. Seeing that youth walk into the house of the Marquis of Xuanji, Lin Feng pouted his lips at him and asked the waiter, "Who is that azure-clothed youth?" The waiter hesitated for a moment. Lin Feng smiled and silently passed over a piece of silver, smiling as if nothing had happened and saying, looking at his simple clothing, he doesn't seem to have any status in the house of the Marquis, but his bearing is stern, he doesn't seem like a servant. You have good eyesight. That person is called Zhu Yi, he's the bastard son of the Marquis of Xuanji. I heard that his mother came from a brothel and died of illness early on. The waiter clenched his teeth and accepted the silver, lowering his voice and saying, "But I heard that his knowledge is pretty good and he's currently preparing to participate in the spring examination and the fall examination. If he can really pass then it can be counted as a fortune. After all, a bastard son like him doesn't have the right to inherit the title and property." The waiter said and then sighed. "Speaking of this young Master Yi, he's a pretty good person. Before he drank tea here and he's also very polite. But his situation in the house of the Marquis seems to be average. A few days ago he was even muttering about moving out of the house of the Marquis and going to the temple on the mountain outside the city to stay for a period of time in order to concentrate on preparing for the exams." Hearing up to here, Lin Feng's eyes suddenly lit up. Not far behind him, two tea guests that seemed to be very ordinary looked at each other when they heard this. Their eyes also lit up with an indescribable brilliance. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.